Blood pooled beneath the flickering neon of a 24-hour diner, spreading like dark wine across cracked pavement. The woman lying motionless had taken 5 savage knife strikes, not for herself, but for a grizzled stranger and the war dog sleeping at his feet. She was nobody. Just a night shift nurse in scrubs, clocking minimum wages, invisible to a world that had long stopped noticing her. But in exactly 18 hours, 230 elite warriors would form a silent wall outside her hospital room. Men who kill for a living, now standing vigil for a woman most of them had never met, because they knew something the rest of the world didn't. Before we dive in, if you want to see how this story ends, if you want to watch justice unfold in the most unexpected way, stay with me until the very last word, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. The emergency room doors of Crossfire Regional Medical Center slid open at 11:47 p.m., releasing another exhausted soul into the freezing February night. Emma Voss pulled her thin jacket tighter, breath misting in the Nevada desert cold. 31 years old, 5'4", brown hair always pulled back in the same practical ponytail. To the doctors who barely learned her name, to the patients who forgot her face the moment their discharge papers were signed, Emma was furniture, wallpaper, the kind of nurse you walk past without seeing. She didn't mind. Invisibility had its advantages. Her 2009 Honda Civic sat alone in the far corner of the employee lot, beneath a broken streetlight the maintenance crew had been promising to fix for 3 months. Emma's shift had run long. A car accident on Route 50 had flooded them with trauma cases. Her lower back ached. Her feet screamed. She wanted nothing more than the silence of her studio apartment and 8 hours of dreamless sleep. She was halfway to her car when she heard the shouting. The Silver Cup Diner sat adjacent to the hospital parking lot, its vintage chrome facade glowing against the night. Through the plate glass windows, Emma could see the late-night crowd, truckers, insomniacs, ER staff grabbing post-shift coffee. The yelling was coming from outside, near the dumpsters in the side alley. Emma's training kicked in before her common sense could intervene. She changed direction. The alley smelled like grease and rotting produce. 2 men in their 30s stood over someone sitting on a milk crate, an older man in a faded army jacket, maybe 70, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades in the sun. At his feet lay a German shepherd, gray around the muzzle, wearing a service dog vest. "I said, move your ass, old man!" The taller of the 2 aggressors swayed slightly, drunk. His companion, stockier with a shaved head, kicked the milk crate. It skittered across the pavement. The veteran didn't move. He just stared straight ahead, one hand resting on the dog's head. "You hear me?" Tall guy stepped closer. "This is private property. You're trespassing." "I was inside," the veteran said quietly. His voice carried the flat affect Emma recognized, someone who'd trained himself not to react. "Having coffee. They told me to wait here for my ride." "Well, your ride ain't coming." Shaved head laughed. "What's with the mutt? Too stupid to get a real dog?" The German shepherd's ears flattened. A low rumble built in its chest. Emma's hands tightened into fists. She knew she should walk away. Call security. Let someone else handle it. But something about the veteran's stillness, the way he sat perfectly straight despite the verbal assault, made her feet move forward instead. "Hey!" Her voice cut through the alley. Both men turned. "Leave him alone." Tall guy's eyes traveled over her. Scrubs, hospital badge, barely 5 feet and change. His smile was ugly. "Who's this? Captain America in a nurse costume?" "I work here," Emma said evenly, moving between the men and the veteran. "This is hospital property. You're harassing a patient. I'm asking you nicely to leave." Shaved head took a step toward her. "You're asking us? That's cute." His breath reeked of bourbon. "How about you mind your own business before you get hurt, sweetheart?" The veteran spoke from behind her. "Miss, it's okay. I don't want trouble." "There won't be trouble," Emma said, eyes locked on shaved head. "Because these gentlemen are leaving, right now." Something shifted in Tall Guy's expression. The drunk amusement crystallized into something harder. "You got a mouth on you, and you've got somewhere else to be." For a moment, nobody moved. The German shepherd stood slowly, positioning itself between Emma and the men. its lips pulled back, revealing yellowed teeth. "Control your animal," Shaved Head snarled. "He's a service dog," the veteran said. "He's trained to—" Tall Guy suddenly lunged forward and shoved Emma hard. She stumbled backward into the veteran, who caught her shoulders to steady her. The German Shepherd barked, sharp, aggressive, a sound that echoed off the alley walls. "Shut that thing up!" Shaved Head reached for the dog. The veteran moved with surprising speed for his age, pulling the German Shepherd back. "Don't touch him!" That's when Emma saw the glint of steel. Time compressed. The knife appeared in Tall Guy's hand like magic, a folding blade, maybe 4 inches, catching the distant streetlight. He wasn't even looking at the veteran anymore. He was looking at Emma. "Tough girl," he hissed. "Let's see how tough." The blade came up fast, angled toward her ribs. Emma didn't think. Her body responded with muscle memory burned in years before nursing school, in a life she'd left behind. She pivoted, knocked his arm wide with her forearm, and drove her palm into his solar plexus. He gasped, doubling over, but Shaved Head was already moving. He caught her from the side, one arm wrapping around her throat, cutting off air. Emma drove her elbow back into his gut, once, twice. His grip loosened just enough for her to twist, but Tall Guy had recovered. He came at her again, blade leading. "Get back!" Emma shoved the veteran hard, sending him stumbling away with the dog. Then she turned to face both attackers. The first cut caught her left forearm as she blocked. Hot pain, immediate and electric. The second slash opened her shoulder. Emma grabbed Tall Guy's wrist, hyperextending it until he screamed and dropped the knife. Shaved Head tackled her from behind. They went down together, Emma's head cracking against the pavement. Stars burst across her vision. She felt hands on her, rolling her over. Saw a Tall Guy pick up the fallen knife. His face was twisted with rage. "Stupid bitch," he panted. "You just had to be a hero." The blade came down. Emma threw up her hands. The steel punched through her right palm, through tendons and bone. She screamed, used her left hand to catch his wrist again, but Shaved Head was on her legs, pinning them. The second stab hit her abdomen, below the ribs. The third came immediately after, same location. Emma felt her body go cold. Shock, she thought distantly. I'm going into shock. Through failing vision, she saw the veteran on the ground where she'd pushed him, one hand on the German Shepherd's collar, holding the dog back. The animal was snarling, fighting to reach her. "Run," Emma whispered. Blood filled her mouth. "Run!" The fourth and fifth stabs came in rapid succession. Emma stopped feeling them. She was somewhere else now, floating above the alley, watching herself bleed out on garbage-strewn pavement. The attackers stood over her for 3 seconds, then they ran. Footsteps pounded away into the night. Car doors slammed, tires squealed. The veteran crawled to her, pressing his jacket against the wounds in her stomach. "Stay with me," he was saying. "Stay with me. Someone call 911! Help!" The German Shepherd lay down beside Emma, pressing its warm body against her side. Emma's eyes found the dog's face. One ear up, one ear down. Cloudy eyes that had seen combat, just like hers once had. She tried to lift her hand to pet him, but couldn't make her arm move. "Ranger," the veteran said, voice breaking. "Her name's Ranger." Emma's vision tunneled. The last thing she heard was the veteran's voice, cracked with tears. "Please don't die. Please. You don't understand. You don't know what you just did." Then darkness swallowed everything. Quote, "The trauma bay at Crossfire Regional exploded into controlled chaos at 12:04 a.m. Female, early 30s, multiple stab wounds to torso and extremities." The paramedic's voice boomed over the clatter of the gurney. "BP 70 over 40 and dropping. She's one of yours. Emma Voss, night shift trauma." Dr. Sarah Chen looked up from the motorcycle accident victim she was suturing. "What?" "It's Emma," the paramedic repeated. "Someone stabbed her in the diner alley." The ER went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then Sarah was running, shoving aside equipment, other staff members scattering to make room. The gurney burst through the doors with Emma on it, pale as a ghost, covered in blood, not moving. "Jesus Christ," Sarah breathed. She'd worked with Emma for 4 years. Quiet Emma. Reliable Emma. Emma who always picked up extra shifts and never complained. "Get me 2 large-bore IVs, O-negative blood, and I want an OR prepped now. Hands moved in coordinated precision. Nurses Emma had worked alongside for years now worked to save her life. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She's not breathing, someone said. Sarah began chest compressions. Come on, Emma, come on, you don't get to check out like this. The intubation went in, the breathing bag started pumping, blood poured into her veins through plastic tubes. BP's coming up, a nurse reported, 80/50. Not good enough. Keep pushing fluids. Where's my surgical team? 2 minutes out, Sarah examined the wounds while maintaining compressions. Entry wounds, she counted 5, all deep, all potentially fatal. The abdominal injuries alone could mean ruptured organs, internal bleeding, sepsis. The hand wound had severed tendons. Who did this? Sarah asked nobody in particular. A police officer stood near the door, notebook out. 2 suspects fled the scene. We have a witness, the victim she was defending. He said she took the knife for him. She what? Stepped in front of him. Took all 5 hits herself. Sarah looked down at Emma's ashen face. Why would she? He's in the waiting room now with his service dog. Says he needs to talk to someone. Says it's urgent. Tell him she's in surgery and I don't have time. The officer hesitated. Doctor, he said to tell you she's not just a nurse. He said you need to make some calls. What calls? He wouldn't say. Just kept repeating that people need to know what happened to her. Sarah filed it away for later. Right now, Emma Voss was dying on her table, and nothing else mattered. The OR doors crashed open. 2 surgeons in full gear rushed in. We've got her, Dr. Marcus Webb said, already assessing the damage. Sarah, good work. We'll take it from here. They wheeled Emma away at a run. Sarah stood in the trauma bay, covered in her colleague's blood, hands shaking with adrenaline come-down. Behind her, a nurse was crying quietly. In the waiting room, the veteran sat with Ranger's head in his lap, a borrowed phone pressed to his ear. When someone answered on the other end, his voice was steady despite the tears on his face. This is Dan Garrett, former Master Chief, SEAL Team 7. I need you to spread the word. The nurse who saved me tonight, she's not civilian. She's one of ours. Combat medic, OEF deployment, attached to Task Force Dagger in 2012, and she just took 5 blades meant for me and my dog. A pause. Yeah, I need everyone to know. She saved my life. Now we save hers. He hung up and made another call, then another. By 1 a.m., Dan Garrett had made 14 phone calls. By 2 a.m., encrypted messages were bouncing through a network that most civilians didn't know existed. Veterans forums, SEAL team group chats, military brotherhood channels that spanned the country. By 3 a.m., men were packing bags in Virginia, California, Texas, Florida. By 4 a.m., flights were being booked. By 5 a.m., the first vehicles started arriving in Crossfire, Nevada, a town most of them had never heard of until tonight. Inside Operating Room 3, Dr. Marcus Webb was 6 hours into the most complex trauma surgery of his career. Emma's spleen was destroyed, removed. Her liver had been lacerated, repaired. 2 sections of perforated bowel, resected. The hand wound required a microsurgeon to reconstruct severed tendons. How much blood have we given her? Marcus asked. 12 units? The anesthesiologist replied. Make it 14. She's still oozing. The surgery stretched into dawn. Outside, the sky began to lighten over the Nevada desert, painting the mountains pink and gold. In the parking lot of Crossfire Regional Medical Center, something unprecedented was happening. The first arrival was a black Ford F-250 with California plates. 2 men in their 40s stepped out, broad-shouldered, watchful eyes, moving with the distinctive economy of motion that marked Special Operations veterans. They didn't go inside. They just took up position near the ER entrance and waited. 20 minutes later, a Harley rumbled into the lot. The rider parked, removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face and buzz-cut gray hair. He nodded at the 2 men by the entrance and joined them. Then another truck, a sedan. 2 motorcycles riding in formation. By 7 a.m., there were 30 men in the parking lot. By 8 a.m., there were 70. Hospital security noticed. The head of security, a former cop named Martinez, approached the growing crowd. Gentlemen, I'm going to need to know what's going on here. One of the men turned. His eyes were hard, his voice quiet. "We're here for Emma Voss." "Are you family?" "We're her brothers." Martinez frowned. "I don't understand." "You don't need to. Is she alive?" "She's in surgery. I can't give you information unless you're immediate family." The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We're immediate as it gets. That woman bled out in an alley protecting one of ours. We're not leaving until we know she's okay." Martinez looked at the assembled crowd. More were still arriving. These weren't protesters or troublemakers. They stood in loose formation, quiet, disciplined. Many wore veteran caps. Some had visible tattoos, tridents, eagle globe anchors, unit insignias. I'll see what I can find out," Martinez said. He went inside and found Dr. Chen catching a break in the doctor's lounge. "Sarah, there's something weird happening outside." "Define weird." "There are maybe 80 veterans in our parking lot. They're asking about Emma Voss." Sarah's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. "How do they even know about Emma?" "That's what I'm wondering. They're saying she's one of theirs." "What does that mean?" Sarah thought back to the police officer's comment. Not just a nurse. She pulled out her phone and did something she probably shouldn't have. She accessed Emma's employment file. Emergency contact, none listed. Next of kin, none listed. Previous employment before nursing school. Sarah's eyes widened. Previous employer, U.S. Army, Medic 68W Combat Specialist. Deployment history, Afghanistan 2011 to 2013. Attached units, redacted. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. Martinez leaned over her shoulder. "What?" "She was a combat medic, deployed to Afghanistan. And look at this. Her unit attachments are classified." "Classified? What does that mean?" "It means she wasn't patching up regular infantry," Sarah said slowly. "If her unit details are redacted, she was working with special operations. She was saving SEALs, Rangers, maybe Delta, and now one of them just called in every favor he had." Martinez's face went pale. "How many do you think are coming?" Sarah looked out the lounge window toward the parking lot. More headlights were pulling in. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out exactly how seriously these men take care of their own." By 9 a.m., Dr. Marcus Webb emerged from surgery. His scrubs were blood-soaked, his face haggard, but his eyes were clear. Dan Garrett stood immediately. Ranger stood with him. "She's alive," Marcus said. "Critical, but stable. The next 72 hours will tell us everything." Dan's knees buckled. He caught himself on a chair. "Thank God. Can I see her?" "I see you in about 2 hours, once we get her settled. Are you family?" "Close enough." Marcus studied him. "The police want to talk to you. They have questions about what happened." "I've already given my statement. Those men attacked her because she defended me. I saw their faces. I'll identify them. They're not getting away with this." "Good." Marcus paused. "The staff tells me there are a lot of people outside asking about her." "There are." "How many?" "Last I counted, about 120. More are coming." Marcus blinked. "What?" "She saved my life, doctor." She didn't hesitate. Didn't think about herself. Just saw someone in trouble and moved. That's who she is. That's who she's always been. We take care of people like that. "We?" Dan pulled aside his collar, revealing a trident tattoo. "Navy SEALs don't forget their combat medics. Ever. And word travels fast." Marcus stood very still. "How many are coming?" "All of them who can make it." By noon, the parking lot of Crossfire Regional Medical Center looked like a military staging area. Black trucks, motorcycles, sedans. 217 men and women, current and former special operations personnel, standing in loose formation in the Nevada sun. No signs, no chants, no fanfare. Just presence. The hospital administrator, Helen Brewster, stood at her office window and stared. What the hell is happening? Her assistant pulled up local news on her tablet. It's trending on social media. Someone posted photos. They're calling it the Warrior Vigil. Apparently the nurse who was stabbed last night, Emma Voss, she's some kind of war hero? Emma? Helen scrolled through Emma's file on her computer. Hired 4 years ago. Exemplary performance reviews. Never called in sick. Picked up holidays so other nurses could spend time with family. Our Emma? The one who always brings donuts to night shift? According to this, she served in Afghanistan with elite units, saved lives under fire. And last night she threw herself in front of a knife to protect a veteran and his service dog. Helen felt something cold settle in her stomach. Emma Voss had worked at this hospital for 4 years. 4 years. And Helen had never bothered to learn anything about her beyond her shift schedule and badge number. I walk past her every day, Helen said quietly. I don't think I've ever actually seen her. Nobody did, her assistant said. That's the point. She didn't want to be seen, but now everyone's looking. The news vans arrived at 1 p.m. Local stations first, then regional, then national. A nurse who'd saved countless lives in a war zone had been stabbed while defending a veteran at home. The irony was too perfect, the symbolism too powerful. We need a statement, Helen said. Get Dr. Webb. We're doing a press conference. But before they could organize anything, something else happened. The warriors in the parking lot shifted formation. They'd been standing in loose groups, talking quietly, waiting for updates. Now they moved with sudden purpose, creating 2 parallel lines forming a corridor from the parking lot to the hospital entrance. At parade rest. Silent, facing each other. What are they doing? Helen asked. A nurse who'd been watching from the break room turned. I think they're making an honor corridor. For who? For when they bring her out of ICU. For when she wakes up. They want her to see them. Helen's throat tightened. She can't walk. She's on a ventilator. They know. They're doing it anyway. They'll wait as long as it takes. In ICU room 7, Emma Voss lay motionless. Machines breathed for her. Monitors tracked every heartbeat. Tubes and wires connected her to life itself. Sarah Chen sat beside the bed, holding Emma's undamaged hand. You're trending on Twitter, she said softly, knowing Emma couldn't hear. There are 200 warriors outside waiting for you to wake up. The whole country is watching. Emma's chest rose and fell with the ventilator's rhythm. I worked with you for 4 years, Sarah continued. We had coffee together. We complained about administration together. And I never knew. I never asked. She paused. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry we didn't see you. A tear rolled down Sarah's cheek. But they see you. They always saw you, and now they're making damn sure everyone else does too. Outside, the corridor held formation, and in a county jail 30 miles away, 2 men sat in separate cells, still drunk, still angry, not yet understanding that they had made the worst mistake of their lives. They had stabbed a warrior, and her brothers had come. The surveillance footage hit the detective's desk at 2:17 p.m. Detective Ray Kimura had been working homicide and major crimes in Crossfire for 16 years. He'd seen stabbings before, bar fights gone wrong, domestic disputes, gang violence. But this case felt different from the moment he'd gotten the call. The victim was a nurse, the attack was unprovoked, and now his parking lot was filling with what looked like a small army. He slid the USB drive into his computer and pulled up the Silver Cup Diner's exterior camera feed. The timestamp read 11:52 p.m. The angle captured the side alley in grainy black and white. Ray watched Dan Garrett sitting on the milk crate, Ranger at his feet. Watched the 2 men approach. The body language was aggressive even without sound. Chest puffing, finger pointing, that distinctive swagger of men who'd spent the evening building liquid courage. Then Emma Voss entered the frame. Ray leaned closer to the screen. She was tiny compared to the 2 attackers, but her posture was wrong for someone who was scared. She moved between them and Garrett with deliberate steps, hands visible, non-threatening but firm. He couldn't hear what she was saying, but he could read her lips on one phrase. Leave him alone. What happened next took 11 seconds. The shove, the dog's reaction, Emma steadying Garrett, the blade appearing in the taller suspect's hand. Emma's movement. Ray rewound it twice to make sure he was seeing it correctly. She hadn't flinched. She'd blocked, struck, moved with precision that spoke of training. Real training. Then the tackle. Both men on her. The knife rising and falling, 5 distinct strikes. Emma's body going limp. The suspects running. Garrett crawling to her, pressing his jacket to her wounds, screaming for help. Ray stopped the video and sat back. He'd seen enough violence to recognize what he'd just witnessed. This wasn't self-defense gone wrong. This was attempted murder. Premeditated the moment that blade came out. And the victim. The victim had fought back with skills that didn't come from nursing school. His partner, Detective Lisa Moreno, appeared in the doorway. "You watch it?" "Yeah." "Clean footage. We can identify both suspects. Garrett already gave us descriptions, and we got lucky. The taller one's got a prior. Assault with a deadly weapon 3 years ago. Pled down to battery. Name? Travis Keller, 34. The other one's his cousin, Jason Keller. Also got a sheet. Drunk and disorderly, destruction of property, couple of bar fights. They're not criminal masterminds, Ray. They're just violent drunks." Ray pulled up the arrest records on his second monitor. Travis Keller's mugshot stared back at him. Hard eyes, sneer that probably never left his face. "Where are they now?" "That's the interesting part. We put out a bolo at 1 a.m., got a hit 2 hours ago. Someone called in a tip, said they overheard 2 guys bragging about teaching some nurse a lesson at a bar on the east side. Uniforms picked them up at Travis's apartment, still half drunk, laughing about it." "They confessed?" "Not exactly, but Jason wouldn't shut up, kept saying the nurse had it coming for disrespecting them. We've got it all on body cam." Ray stood. "Let's go have a conversation." The interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Travis Keller sat handcuffed to the table, shoulders hunched, eyes tracking Ray and Lisa as they entered. His public defender, a tired woman named Patricia Ross, sat beside him, already looking defeated. Ray didn't sit. He stood across the table, arms crossed, and let the silence build. Travis broke first. "This is bullshit. We didn't do anything." "Really?" Ray opened a folder and slid out a still frame from the surveillance footage. The moment Travis's knife entered Emma's abdomen. "Because this looks like something." Travis's face went pale. Patricia leaned over to examine the photo, then closed her eyes briefly. "My client wishes to invoke his right to remain silent," she said. "That's fine," Lisa said, taking a seat. "We don't actually need him to talk. We've got video. We've got witnesses. We've got his cousin in the next room giving a statement right now. And we've got the victim's blood all over both their clothes, which our forensics team is processing as we speak." Travis's jaw worked. "It was self-defense. She attacked us first." Patricia touched his arm. "Travis, don't—" "She came at me! I was defending myself." Ray let him talk. Suspects always thought they were smarter than they were. "She shoved me. She hit me. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to walk away," Ray said quietly. "Instead, you pulled a knife and stabbed an unarmed woman 5 times. A nurse. Someone who saves lives for a living. You stabbed her in an alley and left her to bleed out on the pavement. She shouldn't have gotten involved. We were just telling that old guy to move along, and she came out of nowhere acting like some kind of hero. This is on her." Lisa pulled out another photo. Emma's driver's license picture. "This is Emma Voss, 31 years old, trauma nurse at Crossfire Regional. Before that, she was a combat medic in Afghanistan. She saved lives under enemy fire. She came home, became a nurse, and last night she stopped to help a veteran being harassed. And you stabbed her for it." Travis stared at the photo. Something flickered in his eyes, not remorse, but calculation. He was realizing this looked bad. "I want a deal," he said. Patricia's head snapped toward him. "Travis, I'll give you Jason. He's the one who held her down. I barely touched her." Ray leaned across the table. "You barely touched her? Travis, you put a knife through her hand. You punctured her liver. You destroyed her spleen. She's in ICU right now on a ventilator, and doctors aren't sure if she's going to make it. You didn't barely touch her. You tried to kill her." "It wasn't supposed to—" Travis stopped himself. "Wasn't supposed to what?" Lisa pressed. "Wasn't supposed to go this far. Wasn't supposed to get caught on camera. Wasn't supposed to matter because she was just some nobody nurse?" Travis's face hardened. "I want a lawyer. A real one." Patricia stood. "We're done here." Ray gathered his files. "You're done, all right. Attempted murder. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Assault on a veteran, which triggers enhancement statutes. And if that nurse dies, you're looking at murder one. He left Travis sitting there, handcuffed, and finally starting to understand the magnitude of what he'd done. In the adjacent interrogation room, Jason Keller was already crying. Jason was younger, 31, softer around the edges. He'd probably spent his whole life following Travis's lead, and now that lead had taken him somewhere he couldn't back out of. "I didn't want to hurt her," Jason said, hands shaking. "Travis said we were just going to scare the old guy, get him to move. Then she showed up and started giving us orders, and Travis got mad. He gets mad easy when he drinks." Lisa sat across from him, voice gentle. "What happened after she showed up, Jason?" "She told us to leave. Travis pushed her. Then the dog started barking and everything got crazy. Travis pulled his knife. I didn't even know he had it. And she fought him, really fought him. I've never seen anyone move like that. She wasn't scared at all." "So you helped him?" Jason's face crumpled. "I panicked. She was hitting Travis, and I thought she was going to really hurt him, so I grabbed her from behind. I was just trying to stop the fight." "By tackling her to the ground and holding her down while your cousin stabbed her 5 times? "I didn't know he was going to stab her. I let go as soon as I saw the knife. I swear to God, I let go." Lisa slid the surveillance photo across the table. "This was taken at 11:53:47 p.m. Your hands are on her legs. Travis is driving the knife into her stomach. You held her down, Jason. You helped him kill her." Jason vomited into the trash can beside his chair. When he could speak again, his voice was barely a whisper. "Is she dead?" "Not yet, but she might be. And if she dies, you're both going down for murder." Jason's lawyer, a court-appointed defender named Marcus Hill, looked at the evidence spread across the table and then at his client. "Jason, I strongly advise you to cooperate fully. The prosecution has you dead to rights. Your only hope is to show remorse and help them build the case against Travis." "Travis is my cousin. Travis put a knife in an innocent woman and made you an accessory to attempted murder. Family doesn't matter when you're looking at 25 to life." Jason buried his face in his hands. By 4 p.m., both suspects had been formally charged. Travis Keller, attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, assault on a disabled veteran, animal cruelty for threatening the service dog. Jason Keller, attempted murder as an accomplice, aggravated assault, obstruction, no bail, too dangerous, too much flight risk, and the public outcry was already building. The district attorney, Margaret Chen, held a press conference on the courthouse steps at 5 p.m. She was 53, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for taking violent crime personally. "Let me be clear," she told the assembled cameras. "This office will prosecute this case to the fullest extent of the law. What happened to Emma Voss was not a fight. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a brutal, unprovoked attack on a healthcare worker who intervened to protect a vulnerable veteran. The suspects showed no mercy. They will receive no leniency." A reporter called out, "Is it true the victim is a war veteran herself?" Margaret paused. "Emma Voss served her country with distinction in Afghanistan as a combat medic. She saved American lives on the battlefield. She came home and continued saving lives as a nurse. Last night, she saw someone in danger and acted without hesitation. That's the kind of person she is. And the people responsible for nearly killing her will answer for it." What about the veteran community response? There are reports of hundreds of people gathering at the hospital. The response from the veteran community shows us who Emma Voss really is. She's one of theirs. She's always been one of theirs. And they're making sure the world knows it. The press conference ended. Margaret walked back into the courthouse where Ray was waiting. "We need to move fast on this," she said. "Media attention is only going to intensify. I want forensics completed, witness statements locked down, and a grand jury convened within the week. The defense is going to claim self-defense. Let them try. We've got video showing Emma was trying to de-escalate. We've got a witness who will testify she was protecting him. And we've got the defendant's own words admitting they were angry at her for disrespecting them. This isn't self-defense. This is retaliation." Ray nodded. "There's something else you should know. I did some digging into Emma's military record. And? Most of it's classified, but what I could access shows she was attached to Special Operations Units, SEAL teams specifically. She was patching up Tier 1 operators in firefights. The woman's got medals for valor that she never talks about." Margaret's expression hardened. So she's been a hero her entire adult life, and nobody noticed until she was bleeding out in an alley. That about sums it up. Well, they're noticing now. At Crossfire Regional, the warrior vigil continued. By evening, the count had reached 233. They'd organized themselves into shifts, some standing watch, others resting in vehicles, rotating every few hours. Food appeared, donated by local restaurants. Water, coffee. Nobody asked for it. People just brought it. Dan Garrett moved among them, Ranger at his side. He knew many of these men personally, had served with them, bled with them. Others were strangers bound by the same code. They came when called, always. A young woman in her late 20s approached him. She wore a Navy veteran cap and had the same watchful eyes as the men around her. Master Chief Garrett? Just Dan now. I'm Rachel Torres. I served as a hospital corpsman with 2nd Marine Division. I heard what happened. I drove 16 hours from Colorado to be here. Dan shook her hand. You knew Emma? No, but I know what it means when a medic takes the hit. We don't leave that unpaid. More were still coming. By nightfall, the parking lot was full. Vehicles lined the surrounding streets. The hospital had to open additional visitor areas just to accommodate everyone asking for updates. Inside, Helen Brewster stood in her office, watching the crowd through her window. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing, board members demanding explanations, insurance companies asking about liability, lawyers wanting statements. We need to issue a statement about hospital security, her chief counsel said. All these people on our property, they're not threatening anyone, Helen interrupted. They're waiting, quietly, respectfully. If we try to remove them, we'll have a PR nightmare that'll make national news. This is already national news. Helen's phone buzzed. Another text from a board member. She ignored it. I'm going to ICU, she said. Helen, you can't just... I employ that woman. I walk past her desk 3 times a week, and I never learned her name. I'm going to ICU, and you can either come with me or get out of my way. The ICU floor was quiet. Sarah Chen stood outside Emma's room, reviewing charts on a tablet. She looked up when Helen approached. How is she? Critical but holding steady. No change in the last 6 hours. We'll start weaning her off sedation tomorrow, see if she can breathe on her own. Can I see her? Sarah hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. Don't touch anything. Helen stepped into the room and stopped. Emma looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines. Tubes ran from her arms, her chest, her throat. Bandages covered her torso. Her right hand was wrapped in surgical gauze. This was Emma Voss, the quiet nurse who always volunteered for holidays, who brought coffee to night shift, who never called in sick, the nurse who'd thrown herself between a knife and a stranger without hesitation. Helen pulled up a chair and sat. I don't know if you can hear me, she said quietly, but I need to say this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we didn't see you. I'm sorry you had to be invisible for so long. Emma's chest rose and fell with the ventilator. There are 200 people outside waiting for you to wake up. The whole country is watching, and I promise you, when you come back from this, you won't be invisible anymore. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Ms. Brewster, there's someone here asking to see the patient. Says he's her former commanding officer. Helen stood. Let him in. The man who entered wore civilian clothes, jeans, a button-down shirt, but everything about him screamed military. 50-something, silver hair cut high and tight, eyes that assessed and calculated in microseconds. He moved to Emma's bedside with the careful precision of someone accustomed to operating rooms in combat zones. Colonel Wade Garrison, he said, offering his hand to Helen. I commanded the medical detachment Emma was assigned to in Afghanistan. She worked for you? With me. Emma was one of the best combat medics I ever saw. Steady under fire, fast with a tourniquet, refused to leave wounded behind. She saved 17 operators during her deployment, 17 men who would have bled out if she hadn't been there. Helen stared at Emma's motionless form. Why didn't anyone know this? Because she didn't want them to. Emma came home different than she left. She'd seen things, done things, lost people she couldn't save. When her service ended, she requested a quiet assignment. No fanfare, no recognition, just wanted to keep saving lives without the noise. So she became a nurse. She stayed a medic, just changed the uniform. Wade touched Emma's shoulder gently. But she's still one of us. And we don't forget. Sarah appeared in the doorway. I'm sorry, but I need to ask you to step out. We're doing vitals checks. Wade nodded. He leaned close to Emma and spoke quietly. Your brothers are here, Voss. All of them. When you wake up, you're going to see what you mean to us. Hold on. He left. Helen followed him into the hallway. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait, and when she wakes up, we make sure she knows she's not alone. That she never was. Wade walked toward the elevator, passing nurses who'd worked with Emma for years and never known who she really was. Outside, night had fallen. The parking lot glowed with headlights and street lamps. The warriors stood in their formation, patient and still. And in a cell 30 miles away, Travis Keller lay on a concrete bunk, staring at the ceiling, finally beginning to understand that he hadn't just stabbed some random nurse. He'd stabbed someone the military brotherhood considered sacred, someone they would move heaven and earth to protect. The next morning started with an earthquake nobody expected. At 6:47 a.m., a post went viral on social media. It was simple, a photo of the warrior formation in Crossfire Regional's parking lot taken from above. The caption read, 233 warriors standing vigil for the combat medic who saved one of their own. She took 5 knives meant for a veteran. Now her brothers are making sure the world remembers her name. Emma Voss. #WarriorVigil. Within 2 hours, the post had been shared 40,000 times. News helicopters appeared over Crossfire by 9 a.m., broadcasting aerial footage of the formation. National networks picked up the story. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. They all ran the same angle. War hero nurse nearly killed defending veteran at home. The irony was perfect. The symbolism was devastating. America loved its stories of quiet heroes revealed, and Emma Voss was the embodiment of that narrative. By noon, the hospital's phone lines were overwhelmed, reporters requesting interviews, veterans organizations offering support, politicians issuing statements. Even the governor of Nevada called, wanting to visit Emma personally once she woke up. Helen Brewster stood in the conference room with her leadership team, watching 3 different news channels on mounted screens. All of them were showing Crossfire Regional. This is insane, her CFO muttered. We're not equipped for this kind of attention. Then we get equipped, Helen said, because that woman lying in ICU earned this attention. She earned it in Afghanistan, and she earned it again in our parking lot. We're going to support her through this, publicly and completely. What about the attackers? Are they talking? According to the DA, they're lawyered up and keeping quiet. But it won't matter. The prosecution has everything they need. What nobody knew yet was that Travis and Jason Keller had just made their situation exponentially worse. At 10:23 a.m., a screenshot appeared on Reddit. Someone had found Jason's Facebook page before it was taken down. The post was from 1:47 a.m. the night of the attack, just hours after they'd fled the scene. It read, "Some people need to learn respect. Taught a lesson tonight. #no regrets." The screenshot exploded across social media. Within minutes, someone else posted Travis's now-deleted Twitter response. "Don't mess with the Keller boys. Found that out the hard way." They had bragged about it, posted about it publicly, celebrated nearly killing Emma Voss while she was still bleeding in surgery. The internet erupted. Ray Kimura got the screenshot forwarded to his email at 10:45 a.m. He printed it immediately and walked it to Margaret Chen's office. She read it twice. "Please tell me this is real." "It's real. We've got the metadata. Timestamps match. And I've already got tech pulling the deleted posts from server caches. They posted about attacking her while she was in surgery. And they're stupid enough to think deleting it would make it disappear." Margaret smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Discovery just got very interesting. I want these screenshots submitted as evidence. I want their social media history subpoenaed, and I want every single post they made in the 72 hours before and after the attack. Already on it. This isn't just attempted murder anymore, Ray. This is premeditated. They were looking for trouble that night, and when Emma got in their way, they made her the target. The prosecution's case was building like an avalanche, massive, unstoppable, gaining momentum with every hour. But in ICU room 7, the only thing that mattered was whether Emma would wake up. At 2 p.m., Dr. Marcus Webb made the decision to begin reducing sedation. Emma had been stable for 24 hours. Her vitals were strong. Her wounds were closed. It was time to see if she could breathe on her own. Sarah Chen stood beside him, monitoring the ventilator settings as they gradually decreased the medication keeping Emma unconscious. "Come on, Emma," Sarah whispered. "Show us you're still in there." At 2:47 p.m., Emma's fingers twitched. At 3:12 p.m., her eyelids fluttered. At 3:34 p.m., her eyes opened. The ventilator tube prevented her from speaking, but her eyes tracked to Sarah's face. Confusion, pain, questions. "You're okay," Sarah said immediately. "You're in ICU. You were stabbed, but you're going to be okay. Just breathe with this machine. Let it help you." Emma's right hand, the one that wasn't bandaged, moved weakly toward the tube in her throat. "I know it's uncomfortable. We'll remove it soon. You're doing great. Just stay calm." Emma's eyes found the window. Through it, she could see movement in the parking lot. People. Lots of people. Sarah followed her gaze. "You've got visitors?" "About 200 of them. They've been here since yesterday waiting for you to wake up." Emma's eyes widened slightly. The question was obvious even without words. Why? "Because you're one of them," Sarah said softly. "You always were. And they don't forget their own." Tears leaked from the corners of Emma's eyes. "Let's get you breathing on your own," Marcus said, checking her oxygen levels. "Then we'll talk about everything else." The extubation took 12 minutes. When the tube came out, Emma coughed, gasped, and then drew her first independent breath in over 30 hours. Her voice, when it came, was barely a rasp. "Dan, Ranger—" "They're fine," Sarah assured her. "Dan's been here the whole time. Ranger too. They're waiting to see you." "The men in custody. You're safe. They can't hurt you." Emma's eyes closed. Exhaustion pulled her back toward sleep, but not before she whispered one more thing. "I'm sorry." Sarah frowned. "Sorry for what?" But Emma was already unconscious again, her body demanding rest. Dan Garrett was allowed into the ICU at 4:15 p.m. Ranger walked beside him, tail wagging slowly. The dog seemed to sense something had changed. Emma was sleeping, but her color was better. The ventilator was gone. She looked more like herself. Dan sat in the chair beside her bed, Ranger's head resting on his knee. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "Mine and Ranger's both. I called in everyone I know to make sure the world understands what you did. And they came. All of them." He pulled out his phone and showed Emma's sleeping face a photo of the parking lot formation. "That's for you. Every single one of them is here because you're a warrior who acted without hesitation. You didn't think about yourself. You just moved. That's what makes you one of us." Ranger whined softly. "She's going to be okay, boy," Dan murmured. "She's tough. Tougher than those bastards thought." A nurse appeared. "I'm sorry, but we need to keep visits short. She needs rest." Dan stood. "Tell her I'll be back. Tell her we're all waiting." He left, and Ranger followed reluctantly, looking back at Emma's still form. Outside, the vigil continued, but something had shifted. Word had spread through the formation. Emma was awake. She was breathing on her own. She was going to survive. A cheer didn't go up. These weren't the kind of men who cheered, but shoulders straightened, faces relaxed. The tension that had held them all for 30 hours released slightly. She was going to make it. And the men who'd tried to kill her were going to pay for every second of what they'd put her through. At the county jail, Travis Keller was informed by his lawyer that new evidence had been submitted to the court. "What evidence?" Travis asked. Patricia Ross slid a printout across the table. "Your social media posts, the ones you deleted." Travis's face went white. "The prosecution has screenshots, metadata, timestamps. You bragged about attacking her. You posted about it while she was in surgery. The jury is going to see that you felt no remorse, that you were proud of what you did." "I was drunk. I didn't mean—" "It doesn't matter what you meant. What matters is what you said. And what you said is going to put you away for 25 years minimum." Travis slammed his fist on the table. This is bullshit. She attacked us first. The video shows otherwise. And now the prosecution can prove you went looking for trouble that night. Your previous posts talk about teaching people lessons and not backing down. You've been building a pattern, Travis, and it's all documented. I want a deal. There is no deal. The DA won't negotiate. Not on this. Not with this much public attention. You're going to trial, and you're going to lose. Travis stared at the wall. For the first time in his life, his ability to talk his way out of consequences had run dry. He was trapped, and everyone knew it. In the adjacent cell, Jason Keller was having a similar conversation with his lawyer. The prosecution is offering you one chance, Marcus Hill said. Testify against Travis, full cooperation. In exchange, they'll drop the attempted murder charge and you'll plead to aggravated assault. 8 to 12 years instead of 25 to life. Jason's hand shook. If I testify, Travis will kill me. Travis is going away for the rest of his functional life. He won't get the chance. And if you don't take this deal, you're going down with him. What do I have to do? Tell the truth, all of it. Who pulled the knife? Who held her down? Who struck first? The prosecution needs your testimony to seal the case against Travis. Jason closed his eyes. Travis was family. They'd grown up together, gotten in trouble together, covered for each other 100 times. But Travis had also made him an accomplice to attempted murder, had ruined his life, had shown no remorse even as that nurse fought for her life in surgery. I'll do it, Jason whispered. I'll testify. Marcus nodded. Smart choice. We'll start prepping your statement tomorrow. The deal was struck. The prosecution had its cooperating witness. The case against Travis Keller was now airtight. Video evidence, physical evidence, witness testimony, and the defendant's own social media posts celebrating the attack. Margaret Chen reviewed the updated case file at 6 p.m. and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. This was as close to a slam dunk as criminal law ever got. But she wasn't finished. At 7 p.m., she held another press conference. This office has received full cooperation from Jason Keller, who will testify against his co-defendant Travis Keller. The evidence against both men is overwhelming and includes surveillance video, forensic analysis, witness statements, and the defendant's own social media posts made after the attack. We are pursuing maximum sentences under all applicable statutes. Justice for Emma Voss will be complete and uncompromising. A reporter asked, Have you spoken with Ms. Voss? She regained consciousness this afternoon and is recovering well. She's aware that her attackers are in custody and that this office is committed to holding them accountable. What message does this case send? Margaret looked directly into the camera. It sends the message that violence against healthcare workers, veterans, and anyone who stands up for what's right will not be tolerated. Emma Voss is a hero, in war and at home. The people who tried to kill her will spend decades behind bars regretting their decision to target her. The press conference ended. The news cycle churned, and across America, millions of people who'd never heard of Crossfire, Nevada now knew the name Emma Voss. But Emma herself was unaware of any of it. She slept through the evening, waking only briefly when nurses came to check vitals or adjust medications. Each time she asked the same question, Are they safe? Every time the answer was the same. Everyone's safe. You saved them. At 11 p.m., Sarah Chen finished her shift and stopped by Emma's room one last time. Emma was awake, staring at the ceiling. Can't sleep? Sarah asked. Hurts, Emma rasped. I'll get you more pain medication. But Emma, you need to know something. Emma turned her head slowly. You're a hero. The whole country knows what you did. There are warriors outside who've been standing watch for you since yesterday. They're not leaving until you're well enough to see them. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I just reacted. You saved a man's life and his dog's life. You took 5 knives that were meant for them. That's not reacting. That's sacrifice. I'm nobody. Sarah took her hand carefully. You're not nobody. You never were. And now everyone knows it. Emma closed her eyes, tears running down her temples. Sarah squeezed her hand gently and left, dimming the lights on her way out. In the darkness, Emma Voss lay alone with her thoughts, her pain, and the weight of recognition she'd spent years trying to avoid. Outside her window, 233 warriors stood in formation under the stars, waiting for the moment when she would finally see them and understand that she had never been invisible to the people who mattered most. And in a cell 30 miles away, Travis Keller stared at concrete walls and realized he had destroyed his own life by underestimating the quiet woman in scrubs who'd dared to tell him no. The two men who had stabbed Emma Voss spent their first night in custody, still convinced they'd walk. Tyler Brennan, the tall one, 34, 3 prior assault charges, sat in interrogation room A with his public defender, a tired woman named Patricia Mills who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "They can't prove intent," Tyler said, leaning back in his chair. "It was self-defense. That bitch attacked us first." Patricia rubbed her temples. "Mr. Brennan, there were witnesses. A veteran who says you instigated some drunk homeless guy in his mutt? That's your star witness?" Tyler laughed. "He probably doesn't even remember what happened. There's also surveillance footage from the diner." Tyler's smile faltered. "What footage?" "The exterior cameras caught the entire altercation. You pursuing Ms. Voss into the alley, the assault, all of it." The color drained from Tyler's face. In interrogation room B, his accomplice, Marcus Webb, no relation to the surgeon, 32, convicted felon on parole, was having a similar conversation with his attorney. But Marcus had made an additional mistake. While sitting in his cell waiting for arraignment, he'd used his one phone call not to contact a lawyer, but to call his girlfriend and brag. "Yeah, we taught that nurse a lesson," he'd said, voice carrying down the cell block. "Stupid bitch thought she could talk to us like that. Bet she won't be so tough now." A corrections officer had documented every word. Detective James Rivera sat in the observation room, watching both interrogations on split-screen monitors. 23 years with Crossfire PD, 15 in homicide. He'd seen a lot of stupid criminals, but these two were exceptional. His partner, Detective Lisa Chen, no relation to Dr. Sarah Chen, entered with 2 coffee cups and a manila folder thick with evidence. "Surveillance footage is crystal clear," she said, handing James a cup. "We've got them on camera initiating contact, pursuing Voss into the alley, and the assault itself. The diner's camera angle isn't perfect, but we can see enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough to show premeditation. Watch this." Lisa pulled up the footage on her tablet. The timestamp read 11:52 p.m. Tyler and Marcus appeared on screen, standing near the diner entrance, watching through the window. "See how they're focused on something inside?" James leaned closer. "The veteran." "Right. They watched him for 4 minutes before approaching. Then look here." She fast-forwarded. "They wait until he goes outside to the alley. They follow deliberately. This isn't random. They targeted him. And Voss got in the way. Not just got in the way, she positioned herself between them and the victim. Watch her body language." Lisa played the crucial moments. Even in grainy black and white footage, Emma's protective stance was clear. Arms out, blocking access, backing the veteran away. She's creating distance, trying to de-escalate. Then Brennan pulls the knife. James watched the attack unfold, watched Emma fight back with surprising skill, watched her push the veteran to safety even as the blade came down again and again. "She knew what she was doing," he said quietly. "That's training." I pulled her background, Army medic, combat deployment, attached to... Lisa paused, frowning at her notes. "It just says redacted." "Redacted how?" "Her unit assignments are classified. I called the VA to verify her service record and got transferred to 3 different people before someone told me I didn't have clearance for that information." James set down his coffee. "A nurse working night shift in Nevada has classified military records?" "Not just classified. I talked to a buddy in the FBI. He says that level of redaction usually means special operations support. She wasn't treating regular soldiers." "Who was she treating?" "People who don't officially exist." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the surveillance footage loop. Emma falling, Emma bleeding, Emma lying motionless while her attackers ran. "The veteran she saved," James said. "Dan Garrett. What do we know about him?" Lisa flipped through the folder. "Daniel Garrett, 72, former Navy Master Chief, retired SEAL, 2 Purple Hearts, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor. Did you see what's happening at the hospital?" "I heard something about a crowd." "It's not a crowd. It's a formation. Over 200 special operations veterans showed up overnight. They're standing vigil." James had been a cop long enough to recognize when a case was bigger than it appeared. This is going to be a media circus. It already is. The hashtag Warrior Vigil is trending nationally. Someone leaked that Voss is a combat veteran. Now every news outlet in the country wants the story. Do we have enough to charge? We have them on attempted murder, aggravated assault, assault with a deadly weapon. I'm also pushing for a hate crime enhancement. James looked up sharply. Hate crime? They didn't target her for race or religion. They targeted a disabled veteran and his federally protected service animal. That falls under disability bias. And here's the kicker. Lisa pulled out another document. Garrett's dog, Ranger, is registered as a wounded warrior service animal. There are federal statutes protecting military working dogs and their handlers. Interfering with a service dog in performance of its duties is a federal offense. They weren't just attacking a man and his pet. They were assaulting a protected veteran and his registered service animal. Exactly. I've already contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're reviewing for federal charges. James allowed himself a small smile. These idiots have no idea what they've done. Should we tell them? Not yet. Let them think they're going to walk. I want to see their faces when they realize they're not. By 3 p.m., the arraignment was scheduled. Tyler Brennan and Marcus Webb were led into the courthouse in shackles, still wearing the same clothes from the night before, now stiff with dried blood. Tyler expected a routine bail hearing, maybe a few $1,000s out by dinner. What he got was standing room only in the courtroom gallery. Every seat was filled. People lined the walls, and in the front 2 rows sat men who looked like they could kill with their bare hands, broad shoulders, hard eyes, absolute stillness. Who are all these people? Tyler whispered to his attorney. Patricia glanced back. Veterans. They're here for the victim. All of them? All of them. Judge Margaret Okonkwo entered, a black woman in her 60s with silver hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen everything. She took her seat, surveyed the packed courtroom, and raised an eyebrow. This is a bail hearing, not a rally, she said. Anyone who disrupts these proceedings will be removed. Is that clear? The veterans didn't respond, didn't move, just watched. The prosecutor stood. Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Lansing, 39, with a conviction rate that made defense attorneys nervous. Your Honor, the state requests remand without bail for both defendants. These men are charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and assault on a disabled veteran and his service animal. The victim, Emma Voss, remains in critical condition. The attack was vicious, premeditated, and captured on surveillance footage. Both defendants have prior criminal records. Mr. Webb is currently on parole. They represent a clear danger to the community and a significant flight risk. Patricia Mills stood. Your Honor, my client maintains his innocence. This was a regrettable altercation, but regrettable? Rebecca's voice cut like glass. Your client stabbed a woman 5 times and left her to die in an alley. The only thing regrettable is that he's still breathing. Objection! Patricia's face flushed. That's inflammatory. Sustained, Judge Okonkwo said. Ms. Lansing, keep it professional. Apologies, Your Honor. Rebecca didn't sound sorry. The point stands. This was not a random fight. The defendant stalked their victim, initiated the confrontation, and attempted to murder her when she intervened to protect a disabled veteran. We have video evidence, witness testimony, and a recorded statement from Mr. Webb bragging about the attack while in custody. Tyler's head snapped toward Marcus. You what? Marcus stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Judge Okonkwo looked at the defense table. Is this true? There's a recorded statement. Marcus's attorney stood reluctantly. My client made an inadvisable phone call from jail. However, what did he say? The attorney hesitated. Rebecca didn't. She pulled out a transcript and read aloud. Yeah, we taught that nurse a lesson. Stupid bitch thought she could talk to us like that. Bet she won't be so tough now. A collective intake of breath from the gallery. One of the veterans in the front row, a man with a gray beard and eyes like flint, leaned forward slightly. The movement was subtle, but everyone noticed. Judge Okonkwo's expression hardened. Bail is denied. Both defendants will remain in custody pending trial. Next appearance is set for... Your Honor, Rebecca interrupted. There's one more thing. The U.S. Attorney's Office has indicated they may pursue federal charges related to interference with a federally protected service animal and assault on a disabled veteran. If federal charges are filed, the defendants could be facing significantly enhanced penalties. Tyler's attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, we haven't been notified of any federal charges. You're being notified now, Rebecca said coldly. The victim's actions saved the life of a decorated Navy SEAL and his registered service dog. There are federal statutes protecting both. The U.S. Attorney is reviewing the case as we speak. For the first time, Tyler looked scared. Wait, what? Federal charges? I didn't know he was quiet, his attorney hissed. But Tyler was spiraling. This is bullshit. It was just some old guy and his dog. How were we supposed to know? Mr. Brennan, Judge Okonkwo's voice cracked like a whip. You will be silent or I will have you gagged. Do you understand? Tyler shut his mouth, but his eyes were wild, darting around the courtroom like a trapped animal. Judge Okonkwo gathered her papers. Defendants remanded without bail, federal charges pending. We're adjourned. The gavel fell. As the bailiffs led Tyler and Marcus out, they had to walk past the rows of veterans. No one spoke. No one moved. They just watched with the flat, measuring stares of men who'd seen real violence and weren't impressed by cowards with knives. Tyler kept his eyes on the floor. Marcus tried to maintain defiance, but his hands were shaking by the time they reached the holding cell door. Outside the courthouse, news cameras swarmed Rebecca Lansing. Ms. Lansing, can you comment on the federal charges? What's the victim's current condition? Is it true she's a war hero? Rebecca raised a hand for silence. Emma Voss remains in critical but stable condition at Crossfire Regional Medical Center. She sustained multiple life-threatening injuries while defending a disabled veteran and his service dog from an unprovoked attack. The defendants in this case showed a complete disregard for human life. They will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of both state and federal law. That's all I can say at this time. What about the veterans at the hospital? What's their connection to Miss Voss? Rebecca paused. This was the question everyone wanted answered. Ms. Voss served her country with distinction in Afghanistan. She saved lives under enemy fire. The veterans standing vigil at the hospital are honoring one of their own. That's what warriors do. They remember. They protect. They never leave anyone behind. The cameras caught it all. By evening, the story had gone viral. News segments led with aerial footage of the warrior formation in the hospital parking lot. Social media exploded with photos, speculation, tributes. But inside the hospital, in ICU Room 7, Emma Voss remained unconscious, unaware that she'd become the center of a national conversation about valor, service, and sacrifice. Dr. Sarah Chen checked Emma's vitals for the 100th time. Blood pressure stable, sure. Heart rate steady. No signs of infection yet, but the critical window was still open. The next 48 hours would determine if Emma would survive, and if she did, what kind of life she'd have. Any change? Dr. Marcus Webb appeared in the doorway, still in scrubs from another surgery. Nothing yet. She's stable, but she's not waking up. Marcus stepped closer to the bed. I've been a trauma surgeon for 15 years. I've seen a lot of knife wounds. These were meant to kill. I know. The precision is what bothers me. Whoever did this wasn't just angry. They were trying to make sure she didn't survive. Sarah looked at him. You think it was personal? I think they wanted her dead, and if Dan Garrett hadn't been there to call 911 immediately, if we'd been even 5 minutes later, he trailed off. But we weren't. She's here. She's fighting. You know what they're saying outside about her military service? I've heard. I pulled some strings. Called a friend at Walter Reed who has higher clearance than I do. Marcus lowered his voice. Emma Voss wasn't just a combat medic. She was embedded with a special operations task force in Helmand Province. She treated casualties under direct fire, saved lives that would have been lost without immediate care. She has a silver star. Sarah's breath caught. A silver star, that's third highest military decoration for valor in combat. She got it for dragging 2 wounded SEALs out of a kill zone while taking enemy fire. One of those SEALs she saved? He's in the parking lot right now. Which one? Marcus nodded toward the window. The guy with the gray beard in the front row. His name's Thomas Reyes. He was one of her patients in Afghanistan, said he'd be dead if not for her. When he heard what happened, he drove straight from San Diego, 18 hours non-stop. Sarah looked out at the formation below. Over 200 warriors, and at least one owed Emma his life directly. How many others had she saved? How many lives had she touched without ever asking for recognition? Why didn't she tell anyone, Sig? Sarah asked. Why work here as a regular nurse? Why hide what she did? I asked Thomas the same thing. He said Emma never wanted to be defined by war. She did her duty, came home, and tried to build a normal life. She didn't want the attention. Well, she's got it now. A nurse appeared at the door, Angela Torres, one of Emma's close friends on the night shift. Her eyes were red from crying. Doctors, there's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent. A man in his 50s entered, suit and tie, federal ID badge. Dr. Webb, Dr. Chen? I'm Special Agent Hollis from the FBI's Violent Crimes Division. I need to talk to you about Emma Voss. Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. We already gave statements to local police, Marcus said. This isn't about the assault. This is about her military service, specifically who she served with. I'm not sure what you're asking. Hollis pulled out a folder. Ms. Voss's service records are classified for a reason. Her unit assignments involved personnel whose identities remain protected for national security. The fact that her background is now becoming public knowledge creates potential complications. What kind of complications? The kind where people she treated overseas might not want their identities revealed. Some of those operations are still classified. If Emma wakes up and starts talking to reporters about her time in Afghanistan, if she wakes up? Sarah's voice went cold. Agent Hollis, Emma's not a security threat. She's a victim fighting for her life. I understand that, but I need to ensure that if she recovers, she understands the sensitivity of what she knows. Marcus stepped between Hollis and Emma's bed. Get out. Excuse me? You heard me. My patient is in critical condition. You want to talk about operational security? Fine. Come back when she's conscious and can actually respond. Until then, get the hell out of my ICU. Hollis's jaw tightened. Doctor, I'm trying to help. You're trying to control a narrative. I've seen it before. Some bureaucrat decides a story is inconvenient and starts making problems for people who deserve better. Emma Voss earned a Silver Star saving lives. She almost died protecting a veteran at home. Whatever you're worried about can wait until she's off a ventilator. Now leave before I call security. For a moment, Hollis looked like he might argue. Then he nodded curtly, pulled out a business card and set it on the counter. When she wakes up, call me, before she talks to anyone else. He left. Sarah let out a shaky breath. That was risky. I don't care. I'm not letting some Fed intimidate a woman who can't defend herself. What if he's right? What if her talking could compromise something? Then she won't talk. Emma's smart. She knows how to keep secrets. But that's her choice to make, not his. Outside, the sun was setting over the Nevada desert. The warrior formation hadn't moved in hours. Some had brought folding chairs. Others sat on truck tailgates. A few caught sleep in shifts, but the formation itself remained constant, a living wall of protection. Dan Garrett stood with Ranger at his feet, talking quietly with Thomas Reyes. How long are we staying? Thomas asked. As long as it takes. Command's going to want some of these guys back. Active duty can't stay indefinitely. They'll stay until we know she's going to make it. Thomas looked at the hospital building. You really think she doesn't remember us? I think she remembers everything. She just chose to move forward instead of looking back. And now we've dragged her back into it. We didn't drag her anywhere, Dan said firmly. She made a choice in that alley. Same choice she made in Helmand. Same choice she's always made. We're just making sure she knows she's not alone this time. A car pulled into the lot, a silver Lexus with government plates. A woman in her 40s stepped out, blonde hair pulled back, wearing a pantsuit that screamed federal authority. She walked directly to Dan. Master Chief Garrett? Retired. I'm Deputy U.S. Attorney Catherine Ward. I'm handling the federal charges against the men who attacked Ms. Voss. Can we talk? Dan gestured to a quiet corner of the lot. Ranger followed, always at his heel. Catherine pulled out a tablet. I've reviewed the evidence. The state charges are solid, but I want to pursue federal hate crime enhancements and charges related to interference with a protected service animal. The problem is, I need to establish that the defendants knew they were targeting a veteran and his service dog. I was wearing my Army jacket. It has my unit patch. Ranger was wearing his service vest, both clearly visible. And they saw these things before the attack? They commented on them, called Ranger a mutt, made jokes about my service. It's on the diner's surveillance audio. Catherine made notes. That establishes knowledge. Good. The federal statute is clear. Willfully injuring or interfering with a service animal while it's performing duties for a disabled veteran carries up to 10 years. Combined with hate crime enhancements for targeting a disabled person, we're looking at significant federal time on top of the state charges. How much time total? If convicted on everything, state charges alone could get them 25 to life. Add federal enhancements, we're talking consecutive sentences. They'd be in federal prison well into old age. And if they take a plea? I'm not offering one. These men don't get to negotiate. They attempted to murder a decorated combat veteran who was protecting another veteran. This is exactly the kind of case that federal hate crime laws were designed for. Dan allowed himself a slight smile. I appreciate your thoroughness. Don't thank me yet. I still need Ms. Voss to wake up and testify. Without her account of what happened, we're relying entirely on your testimony and surveillance footage. The footage should be enough. It is for some charges. But for the full federal case, I need Emma Voss alive and coherent. The words hung in the cold desert air. I need Emma Voss alive. Catherine seemed to realize how that sounded. I'm sorry. I know she's more than a witness to you. She's a warrior, and warriors don't quit. Let's hope you're right. Catherine left. Dan returned to his position in the formation. The night deepened. Temperatures dropped. Someone brought coffee and blankets from town. The warriors wrapped themselves against the cold and kept their vigil. Inside at 11:47 p.m., exactly 24 hours after the attack, something changed. Emma's fingers twitched. The movement was subtle, barely perceptible, but the ICU nurse noticed immediately. She checked the monitors. Emma's brain activity was increasing. Her heart rate was rising. She was emerging from sedation. Get Dr. Webb, the nurse said urgently. She's waking up. Marcus arrived within minutes, Sarah right behind him. They stood at Emma's bedside as her eyes began to flutter beneath closed lids. Emma? Marcus said softly. Can you hear me? No response, but her vitals continued to improve. Emma, you're in the hospital. You're safe. We need you to wake up now. Her eyelids opened slowly. Confusion clouded her gaze. She tried to speak, but the ventilator tube prevented it. Don't try to talk, Sarah said quickly. You have a breathing tube. If you can hear me, squeeze my hand. Emma's fingers tightened weakly around Sarah's. Good. That's good. Emma, you were attacked. You've been in surgery. You have some serious injuries, but you're going to be okay. Do you understand? Another squeeze, then Emma's eyes sharpened, focused. She looked at Sarah with sudden intensity and tried to lift her hand toward the ventilator tube. Not yet, Marcus said. Your oxygen levels aren't stable enough. We need to keep the tube in a little longer. Emma's expression shifted to frustration. She mouthed something around the tube. Sarah leaned closer. What? I can't understand. Emma mouthed it again, more deliberately. Sarah finally got it. Dan? Emma nodded weakly. The veteran you saved? He's here. He's outside, along with about 200 of his friends. Emma's eyes widened. She shook her head slightly, confused. It's true, Marcus said. They've been standing vigil for you since this morning. Every special operations veteran who could make it to Crossfire showed up. They're not leaving until they know you're okay. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. She closed her eyes, overwhelmed. They know what you did, Sarah said gently. In Afghanistan, here, all of it. You saved one of their own, Emma. They don't forget that. Marcus checked her vitals. Your numbers are looking good. If they stay stable, we can extubate in a few hours. Think you can rest until then? Emma nodded, but her hand found Sarah's again and held tight. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah promised. By 2 a.m., word had spread through the parking lot formation. She's awake. She's going to make it. The reaction was subtle, shoulders relaxed, quiet conversations. A few prayers whispered. But the formation didn't break. They would stay until they could see her, speak to her, let her know she wasn't alone. At 4:30 a.m., Emma's oxygen levels stabilized. Marcus made the call to remove the ventilator. The process was uncomfortable. Emma gagged and coughed as the tube came out. But when it was done, she could finally breathe on her own. Her first words were a hoarse whisper, "Is Ranger okay?" Dan Garrett, who'd been allowed into the ICU specifically for this moment, stepped to her bedside. "He's fine. Thanks to you." Emma's eyes found his face. Recognition dawned. "I know you." "Dan Garrett. I was the guy in the alley. You saved my life. Your dog is right here." Dan gestured, and a nurse bent the rules by allowing Ranger into the ICU. The German Shepherd approached the bed carefully, as if sensing Emma's fragility. He rested his chin on the mattress beside her hand. Emma's fingers found his fur. "Good boy," she whispered. "He hasn't left the hospital since they brought you in," Dan said. "Knows you saved us both." I couldn't let them hurt you." "Why?" The question came from Marcus, who stood nearby. "Emma, you almost died. You had to know how dangerous it was. Why step in?" Emma was quiet for a moment, her hand still stroking Ranger's head. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible, because someone has to. The simplicity of it struck everyone in the room, not because it was her duty, not for glory or recognition, just because someone has to stand between violence and the innocent. "There are a lot of people outside who want to see you," Dan said. "Warriors who served with you, warriors who heard what you did. You ready for that?" Emma's expression shifted to something like panic. I'm not. "You don't have to be anything except yourself," Dan said firmly. "They're not here because they want something from you. They're here because you're family, and family shows up." Emma closed her eyes, processing. When she opened them again, there was resignation mixed with something else. Acceptance, maybe. Or understanding. "Okay," she whispered. As dawn broke over Crossfire, the hospital made arrangements. They couldn't bring 200 people into ICU, but they could put Emma in a wheelchair at the window so she could see the formation. At 7 a.m., nurses carefully transferred Emma from bed to chair. Every movement sent fire through her wounds, but she didn't complain. They wheeled her to the large observation window overlooking the parking lot. Below, in the golden morning light, 200 warriors stood at attention. When they saw her appear at the window, every single one of them saluted. The gesture was sharp, unified, absolute. Emma's breath caught. Her good hand came up in an automatic return salute, shaking, imperfect, but unmistakable. For 30 seconds, they held it. 200 warriors and one broken woman acknowledging each other across glass and distance. Then, as one, they dropped their salutes. But they didn't leave. They reformed the honor corridor, creating a pathway from the hospital entrance to the parking lot, waiting for the day when Emma could walk through it. Sarah stood behind Emma's wheelchair, witnessing it all. "They're not going anywhere until you're released," she said softly. "That could be weeks." "They know. They don't care." Emma stared at the formation below, at the faces of men and women who'd dropped everything to stand for her. Some she might have treated in Afghanistan. Most she'd never met. But they stood together, united by something deeper than acquaintance. "I didn't want this," Emma whispered. "I just wanted to be normal." "Too late," Dan said from beside her. "You were never normal. You were always one of us. You just tried to hide it." A reporter van was setting up in the street beyond the hospital property. More would come. This story wasn't going away. And in a county jail, Tyler Brennan sat in his cell, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. He'd attacked a decorated war hero surrounded by a brotherhood that didn't forgive and didn't forget. His arraignment footage had gone viral. His face was now known nationally as the man who'd tried to murder a warrior. In prison, reputation was everything. And his reputation was now that of a coward who stabbed a woman for defending a veteran. He wouldn't last long. The realization hit Tyler Brennan 3 days into his incarceration, when a corrections officer pulled him from breakfast and escorted him to an isolated cell in protective custody. "Why am I being moved?" Tyler demanded. The officer, A veteran himself, based on the faded Marine Corps tattoo on his forearm, didn't look at him. For your own safety. Safety from what? From the general population that now knows exactly who you are and what you did. Tyler's new cell was smaller, colder, and located in a wing where inmates who couldn't survive among other prisoners were housed. Child abusers, snitches, cops who'd been arrested, and now, a man who'd tried to murder a war hero. Through the narrow window, he could see the exercise yard. Inmates gathered in clusters, talking, pointing up at his window. One of them drew a finger across his throat in a slow, deliberate gesture. Tyler stepped back from the glass. In the cell next to his, Marcus Webb was having a similar epiphany. His cellmate, transferred that morning, was a former Army Ranger doing time for assault. The Ranger had seen the news coverage, knew exactly who Marcus was. "You're that guy," the Ranger said, voice flat. "The one who stabbed the nurse." Marcus tried to project confidence. "It was self-defense. She attacked us first." The Ranger stood slowly. He was 6'3", 230 pounds of muscle. Marcus was 5'10" and soft from years of drinking. "Here's what's going to happen," the Ranger said quietly. "You're going to request a cell transfer. You're going to tell the guards you don't feel safe with me. Because if you stay in this cell, I'm going to make sure you understand exactly what it feels like to be on the wrong end of violence." Marcus backed against the wall. "You can't threaten me. I'll report..." "Report what? That your cellmate looked at you wrong? Go ahead. But every time you close your eyes in here, you're going to wonder if tonight's the night I decide you've had enough easy sleep." 2 hours later, Marcus requested protective custody. The guards moved him without comment. They'd seen this before. Prisoners who'd committed crimes against veterans didn't last long in general population. The inmate code was clear. You could rob, deal drugs, even kill. But you didn't touch people who'd served, not unless you wanted to spend the rest of your sentence watching your back. Meanwhile, outside the jail walls, the legal machinery was accelerating. Detective Lisa Chen sat in a conference room with Rebecca Lansing and Deputy U.S. Attorney Catherine Ward, reviewing evidence for what would be one of the fastest-moving prosecutions in Nevada history. "The surveillance footage is damning," Catherine said, replaying the alley attack on a large monitor. "We have clear visual of Brennan initiating violence, Voss defending herself and the victim, and both defendants participating in the stabbing. The audio from the diner's exterior camera captures them discussing their intent to teach her a lesson before the attack even started." Rebecca made notes. "That establishes premeditation. It gets better. I subpoenaed their phone records. Brennan and Webb exchanged texts earlier that evening about having fun with whoever bothered them at the bar. They'd been drinking for 4 hours before they encountered Garrett and Voss. They were looking for trouble." Lisa pulled up another document. "We also found their social media. Brennan has a history of posting anti-military content. Comments about veterans being welfare queens and service members being too stupid for real jobs. Screenshots have been preserved." Catherine leaned forward. "That establishes bias motivation. Combined with Garrett's visible veteran status and Ranger's service vest, we can prove they specifically targeted a disabled veteran. The federal hate crime enhancement is solid." "What about Webb?" Rebecca asked. "Parole records show he was supposed to be home by 10 p.m. the night of the attack. He violated parole by being out, by drinking, and by committing a felony. His parole officer is recommending immediate revocation, which means he's looking at the remainder of his original sentence, 6 years, plus whatever he gets from this case." Rebecca smiled grimly. "So even if he somehow beat the attempted murder charge, which he won't, he's still doing 6 years minimum." "Correct. And there's more." Catherine pulled up financial records. "Webb owes $43,000 in back child support. The mother of his children has been trying to collect for years. When this case made national news, she came forward. She's willing to testify about his history of violence, his disregard for authority, his pattern of blaming others for his problems." "Character evidence." "Exactly. We're building a portrait of 2 violent, entitled men who attacked someone weaker and got more than they bargained for. The jury is going to hate them." Lisa hesitated. "There's one complication. Voss's military records are classified. If the defense demands access to her full service history as part of their case..." "They won't get it," Catherine interrupted. "Her records are sealed for national security reasons. The defense can know she served, can know she was honorably discharged, but they don't get operational details. I've already cleared this with the judge. Her classification level is too high. Will that hurt our case? The defense could argue we're hiding something. Let them argue. The facts are simple. Emma Voss saw a veteran being attacked and intervened. Her military background is relevant only to establish her character and training. The specifics of what she did overseas don't matter to this case. Rebecca closed her folder. When do we go to trial? Judge Okonkwo has fast-tracked this. Jury selection starts in 3 weeks. She wants this case resolved before it turns into a media circus that compromises the jury pool. Too late for that. It's already a circus. Catherine stood, gathering her materials. Then we give them a show they'll never forget. These men tried to kill a hero. We're going to make sure everyone knows it. At Crossfire Regional Medical Center, Emma's recovery was progressing faster than expected. The doctors attributed it to her physical conditioning. Years of military fitness standards, followed by the constant movement of nursing shifts, had left her stronger than average. But Emma knew the real reason. She'd survived worse. This was just another fight. Physical therapy started on day 5. Emma's injuries made every movement agony. The abdominal wounds pulled with each breath. Her sutured hand throbbed constantly. Her shoulder burned, but she pushed through it with the same grim determination that had carried her through combat medicine training. You're pushing too hard, her therapist, a kind woman named Monica, cautioned. Recovery takes time. I don't have time, Emma said, forcing herself to stand from the wheelchair. Her legs shook. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she remained upright. What's the rush? Those men are going to trial in 3 weeks. I need to be able to sit in that courtroom and look them in the eye. Monica helped Emma back into the chair. The prosecution said you don't have to testify if you're not ready. I'm testifying. They need to see what they did. The warrior formation in the parking lot had thinned as active duty members returned to their units, but a core group remained. 27 veterans who'd arranged leave, taken vacation time, or simply quit jobs to stay. Dan Garrett and Thomas Reyes led them, coordinating a rotating schedule to ensure someone was always present. On day 7, hospital administration tried to make them leave. Helen Brewster, the hospital administrator who'd never bothered to learn Emma's name before the attack, appeared in the parking lot with security. Gentlemen, I appreciate your support for Ms. Voss, but this is becoming a disruption. We need you to disperse. Dan turned to face her. We're on public property. We're not blocking access. We're not making noise. What's the problem? You're intimidating our staff and patients. How? By standing quietly? Helen's face flushed. This is a hospital, not a military base. Your presence is inappropriate. Thomas Reyes stepped forward. Ma'am, with respect, Emma Voss worked for you for 4 years. She took every shift nobody wanted. She worked holidays so other nurses could be with their families. She never complained, never asked for anything, and you didn't even know her name until she ended up in your ICU. That's not... We asked around, Thomas continued. Talked to the nursing staff. They told us Emma was invisible to management, just another body filling a shift. But she saved lives in this hospital, saved lives overseas, and when she almost died defending a veteran, you didn't even visit her room, so don't talk to us about inappropriate behavior. Helen stammered. I've been busy with media relations, Dan finished. We know. We've seen the interviews, saw you taking credit for the hospital's culture of service. Funny how Emma embodied that culture and you never noticed until CNN showed up. Security guards shifted uncomfortably. They'd worked with Emma too. They weren't about to forcibly remove veterans standing vigil for her. Helen tried a different approach. Look, I understand you care about her, but she's recovering well. There's no need for this vigil to continue. We'll leave when she tells us to, Dan said simply. Not before. She's already told staff she doesn't want the attention. Then let her tell us herself. Helen realized she was beaten. She turned and walked back into the hospital, heels clicking angrily against pavement. Thomas watched her go. That woman has no idea who Emma is. Nobody did. That was the point. Inside, Emma was having her own confrontation. Special Agent Hollis had returned, this time with a lawyer from the Department of Defense. Ms. Voss, Hollis began, we need to discuss your media strategy. Emma, sitting in her hospital bed with her arm in a sling and drainage tube still attached to her abdomen, stared at him. My what? Your media strategy. How you're going to handle interviews? What you'll say about your service? I'm not doing interviews. The networks are offering significant money for exclusive. I said no. The DoD lawyer, a thin man in his 50s named Arnold Kessler, leaned forward. Ms. Voss, you need to understand that your classification level means you're restricted in what you can publicly discuss. Any interviews would need to be pre-approved, and I'm not doing interviews, Emma repeated. I don't want money. I don't want attention. I just want to recover and go back to my life. That's going to be difficult now, Kessler said. Your face is on every news channel. Your story is everywhere. You can't simply disappear again. Watch me. Hollis tried a softer approach. Emma, we're trying to protect you. Some of the operations you supported are still classified. If reporters start digging into your deployment history, then let them dig. They'll hit the same walls you put up. My records are sealed. Nobody's getting details. But they'll speculate. They'll write stories based on incomplete information. Let them. Emma's voice hardened. I didn't ask for this. I saw someone in trouble and I helped. That's all. Everything else is noise. The men who attacked you are using that noise, Kessler said. Their lawyers are already spinning a narrative that you're a trained killer who overreacted, that you could have walked away but chose violence. Emma's eyes went cold. I have 5 stab wounds that say otherwise. We know that, but a jury might be swayed by. Then the prosecution will do their job and present the truth. I'm testifying. I'm telling exactly what happened. And if the defense wants to paint me as aggressive, they can explain why I was the one who ended up bleeding in an alley. Sarah Chen appeared in the doorway. Gentlemen, visiting hours are over. Ms. Voss needs rest. Hollis stood reluctantly. We're just trying to help. By pressuring an assault victim in her hospital bed. Sarah's voice could have cut glass. Get out. If you want to talk to her again, you can wait until she's discharged and schedule an appointment like everyone else. They left. Emma sagged against her pillows, exhausted. You okay? Sarah asked. I'm tired of people telling me who I'm supposed to be. What do you want to be? Emma was quiet for a long moment. I just want to be someone who did the right thing and lived to talk about it. By day 10, Emma was walking short distances with assistance. By day 12, she was off pain medication during the day, taking it only at night. By day 14, she insisted on being discharged. You're healing remarkably well, Dr. Marcus Webb admitted, but you're not ready to go home. You still need... I need to get out of this hospital before I lose my mind, Emma said. I can change my dressings. I can manage pain. I know the warning signs of infection. I was a combat medic, remember? Marcus sighed. Against my better judgment, I'm going to approve discharge. But you need to check in daily for the first week. Any fever, any increase in pain, any sign of complications, you come back immediately. Deal. The discharge was scheduled for the following morning. Word spread through the remaining veterans in the parking lot. They prepared. When Emma emerged from the hospital entrance in a wheelchair, hospital policy required it even though she could walk. She expected to see Dan and maybe a handful of others. What she saw instead made her breath catch. The honor corridor had reformed. Not 27 veterans this time. Over 100. They'd called in reinforcements for this moment. Warriors who'd driven back from across the country just to be present when Emma walked out. They stood in 2 perfect lines, creating a pathway from the hospital doors to a waiting vehicle. Silent. At attention. Emma's wheelchair stopped. She looked up at the nurse pushing her, Angela, who'd become a close friend during the recovery. Can I walk? Emma asked quietly. You're supposed to stay seated until... Can I walk? Angela understood. She set the wheelchair brake and helped Emma stand. Every movement hurt, but Emma forced herself upright. She took her first step forward on her own. The warriors remained silent, but she felt their eyes on her, watching, witnessing. She walked slowly, carefully, down the corridor they'd created. Her hand pressed against her bandaged abdomen. Her shoulder throbbed, but she kept moving. Halfway down the corridor, she saw Thomas Reyes. Their eyes met. He gave the smallest nod, one warrior to another. At the end of the corridor stood Dan Garrett, with Ranger at his side. When Emma reached them, the German shepherd's tail wagged once. "Proud of you, kid," Dan said softly. Emma's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm not a kid. I'm 31. You're a kid to me, and you're one hell of a warrior. I'm a nurse. You're both." As Emma settled into the passenger seat of Dan's truck, he'd insisted on driving her home. The honor corridor held for one more moment. Then, as one, every veteran saluted. Emma returned the salute through the truck window, hand shaking but steady. Dan pulled out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, the formation dissolved. Warriors climbed into vehicles, started engines, prepared to return to their lives. But they'd been here. They'd stood for her. And Emma would carry that knowledge forever. "Where are we going?" she asked as Dan drove away from the hospital. "Your apartment, unless you want to go somewhere else." "My apartment is fine." Emma paused. "Dan, why did you do all this? You don't even know me." "I know enough. You saved my life in Rangers. You didn't hesitate, didn't calculate the risk. You just moved." He glanced at her. "That's who you are. Same person who ran into fire in Helmand to pull out wounded operators. Same person who's been quietly saving lives in that hospital for 4 years. You don't stop being a warrior just because you're not in uniform." "I wanted to stop. I wanted normal." "Normal's overrated." Dan turned down her street. "Besides, you tried normal. And the first time you saw someone in trouble, you stepped up. That's not normal. That's exceptional." Emma's apartment was exactly as she'd left it, small, neat, almost impersonal. Dan helped her inside while Ranger sniffed around the perimeter. "You need anything?" Dan asked. "Sleep, silence, maybe a week where nobody tries to kill me or make me a symbol. Can't promise the symbol part, but I'll make sure nobody bothers you." He headed for the door, then paused. "Trial starts in 9 days. You sure you're ready?" "I'll be ready." "Emma, you don't have to testify. The prosecution has enough without—" "I'm testifying. Those men need to hear from me. Need to know I survived." Dan nodded slowly. "Okay, but you're not doing it alone. We'll be there, front row." After he left, Emma stood in her living room, surrounded by familiar silence. For 4 years, this apartment had been her sanctuary, a place where she could shed the weight of her past and just exist. Now it felt different, smaller, like she'd outgrown it somehow. She walked to her bedroom, moved carefully onto the bed, and closed her eyes. Sleep came quickly, but dreams followed. She was back in Helmand Province. Dust and heat and the crack of gunfire. A wounded SEAL screaming for help. Her hands slick with blood as she tried to stop the bleeding. The helicopter blades chopping air overhead. Enemy rounds hitting the dirt around her. She woke gasping, hand clutching her bandaged stomach. Not real. Not anymore. But the dreams would keep coming. They always did. The next 9 days passed in a blur of physical therapy appointments, prosecution meetings, and attempts to avoid the media that had camped outside her apartment building. Emma gave no interviews, made no statements, and communicated through Rebecca Lansing's office that she would speak at trial and nowhere else. The prosecution team, Rebecca and Catherine working in tandem, prepared Emma meticulously. They walked her through every question she'd face, every attack the defense might launch, every attempt to discredit her. "They're going to try to make you the aggressor," Rebecca warned during one session. "They'll say you had military training, that you should have de-escalated instead of engaging." I did try to de-escalate. I told them to leave. And when they didn't? I positioned myself between them and Dan, protected the victim. That's basic protective protocol. Catherine made notes. "Good. Keep that language. Protected the victim. Basic protocol. You weren't being aggressive. You were doing exactly what you were trained to do, shield someone vulnerable from harm." "What about my hand?" Emma held up her right hand, still bandaged, fingers stiff from tendon damage. "They're going to say I grabbed the knife." "You blocked a stab aimed at your chest. The hand wound is a defensive injury. We have the surgeon's report confirming the angle of entry is consistent with blocking rather than grabbing." Emma flexed her damaged fingers, wincing. "Will I get full function back?" "The surgeon said 60 to 70% with therapy. You'll have permanent limitations." "So they took my career. I can't do trauma nursing with a damaged dominant hand." Rebecca and Catherine exchanged glances. This was new information. You haven't mentioned that before, Rebecca said carefully. I was trying not to think about it. Emma's voice was flat. Trauma nursing requires fine motor control, starting IVs, suturing, precise medication dosing. I can't do any of that reliably with permanent hand damage. I'm going to have to find a different specialty, maybe phone triage or administrative work. Emma, that's victim impact. That's something the jury needs to hear. It feels like complaining. It's not complaining, it's showing consequences. Catherine leaned forward. These men didn't just hurt you physically. They altered the trajectory of your entire life. You loved trauma nursing, didn't you? Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. Then tell the jury that. Tell them what you lost. The trial began on a Monday morning, 3 weeks and 2 days after the attack. The courthouse was packed. Media crews filled the street outside. Inside, the gallery held Emma's warrior advocates, Dan, Thomas, and 20 others who'd taken time off to attend, alongside reporters, curious locals, and families of both the victim and the accused. Tyler Brennan and Marcus Webb sat at the defense table in ill-fitting suits, looking smaller somehow than they had in the alley. Their attorneys, Patricia Mills and a public defender named Robert Chase, shuffled papers and avoided eye contact with the prosecution. Judge Okonkwo entered. All rise. The trial began. Jury selection had taken 2 days. The final panel consisted of 8 women and 4 men, a retired teacher, a construction worker, a stay-at-home parent, a banker, and others whose faces Emma studied carefully. These 12 people would decide if justice meant anything. Rebecca Lansing's opening statement was surgical. On the night of February 15th, Emma Voss finished a 12-hour shift at Crossfire Regional Medical Center. She was tired. She wanted to go home. Instead, she walked into an alley and saved 2 lives at the cost of her own blood. The defendants will try to convince you this was a fight, that Emma was aggressive, that they were defending themselves. But the evidence will show something very different. It will show 2 drunk men targeting a disabled veteran and his service dog. It will show Emma Voss stepping between them and danger. And it will show these defendants stabbing her 5 times and leaving her to die. This isn't a story about a fight, it's a story about cowardice and courage. And by the end of this trial, you'll know exactly which side these men were on. Patricia Mills' opening was defensive, scrambling for any foothold. My client made mistakes that night. He'd been drinking, he was angry, but he's not a monster. He's a man who felt threatened by someone with military combat training. Ms. Voss had options. She could have called security. She could have walked away. Instead, she confronted 2 men and escalated a verbal dispute into physical violence. My client reacted out of fear. That's not attempted murder. That's a tragic accident born from panic. Emma sat in the gallery, listening to her near death being called an accident. Her hands clenched. Under the table, Dan reached over and squeezed her shoulder once. Steady. The prosecution's case unfolded with devastating precision. Detective Lisa Chen testified about the evidence, surveillance footage, phone records, social media posts. The jury watched the alley attack on a large monitor, frame by frame, as Tyler Brennan's knife came down again and again. One juror covered her mouth. Another looked away. Dr. Marcus Webb testified about Emma's injuries using medical diagrams to show the depth and severity of each stab wound. These weren't defensive wounds? Rebecca asked. No, defensive wounds appear on the palms and forearms as the victim shields themselves. Ms. Voss has 1 defensive wound on her hand where she blocked a strike. The other 4 are direct attacks to her torso, meant to kill. In your professional opinion, would she have died without immediate intervention? Absolutely. She was minutes from bleeding out. Dan Garrett took the stand and described the attack with military precision. Times, positions, exact words spoken. When asked why Emma intervened, he said simply, "Because I was in danger, and she refused to let me die." That's who she is. The defense cross-examination tried to paint Dan as confused, unreliable, possibly drunk himself. Dan remained calm throughout. "Sir, isn't it true you'd been drinking that night?" "I had 1 cup of coffee at the diner. I don't drink alcohol. Haven't in 15 years. "But you can't be certain." "I'm certain I was sober. I'm certain I was attacked." and I'm certain Emma Voss saved my life. On day 3, Emma testified. She walked to the witness stand without assistance, moving slowly but steadily. Her right hand was still bandaged. Her posture showed the care of someone protecting healing wounds. But her eyes were clear. Rebecca began gently. Ms. Voss, can you tell the jury what you do for a living? I'm a trauma nurse at Crossfire Regional Medical Center. Or I was. I'm currently on medical leave. How long have you worked there? 4 years. And before that? I served in the United States Army as a combat medic. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2011. What did you do there? Patricia Mills stood. Objection? Relevance? Your Honor, Ms. Voss's training is directly relevant to understanding her actions that night, Rebecca argued. I'll allow it, but keep it brief. Emma continued. I treated wounded service members in forward operating bases and in combat situations. I was trained to provide emergency medical care under fire. Did you see combat? Yes. Were you ever in danger? Multiple times. Rebecca let that sit for a moment. On the night of February 15th, what happened when you left the hospital? Emma described the attack in clear, unemotional detail. The veterans in the gallery leaned forward, hearing for the first time exactly what had happened in that alley. When the defendants confronted Mr. Garrett, what did you do? I told them to leave him alone. Why? Because he was vulnerable and they were aggressive. Someone needed to intervene. Did you feel threatened? Yes. But you intervened anyway. Yes. Why? Emma looked directly at the jury. Because someone has to. The courtroom was silent. Rebecca continued. What happened when you positioned yourself between the defendants and Mr. Garrett? Tyler Brennan shoved me. I maintained position. He pulled a knife. I tried to disarm him. Marcus Webb grabbed me from behind. Then the stabbing started. How many times were you stabbed? 5? Did you fight back? I tried to defend myself and protect Mr. Garrett. I pushed him away from the fight so he wouldn't be hurt. Even while you were being stabbed? Yes. Ms. Voss, you have military combat training. You know how to fight. Why didn't you run? Emma's voice didn't waver. Because running meant leaving Dan Garrett and Ranger vulnerable. I couldn't do that. Rebecca walked to the evidence table and held up photos of Emma's injuries, stark, clinical images of stab wounds, surgical scars, and damage. These injuries have permanent consequences, don't they? Yes. Can you tell the jury what you've lost? Emma took a breath. The hand damage is permanent. I have limited function in my right hand. I can't do the fine motor work that trauma nursing requires. I'll have to find a different specialty or leave nursing entirely. Her voice cracked slightly. I love trauma nursing. I was good at it, and these men took that from me. Several jurors were crying now. Patricia Mills's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. She tried to suggest Emma had been reckless, that her military training meant she should have known better. Ms. Voss, with your combat experience, didn't you know how dangerous the situation was? Yes. And you engaged anyway? I didn't engage. I protected. But you could have called for help instead of confronting. There wasn't time. Dan Garrett was being threatened immediately. Every second I waited increased the danger to him. Patricia tried another angle. Isn't it true that you grabbed Mr. Brennan's wrist during the altercation? I blocked his knife hand to prevent him from stabbing Mr. Garrett. That's an aggressive action. That's a defensive action. There's a difference. Patricia had no response to that. The defense's case collapsed quickly. Tyler Brennan took the stand against his attorney's advice and immediately made things worse. I was scared, he insisted. She came at me like some kind of soldier. Did she strike you first? Robert Chase asked. Well, no, but did she threaten you verbally? She told us to leave. Is telling someone to leave a threat? Tyler fumbled. It's how she said it, like she was in charge. And that made you afraid? Yes. Rebecca's cross-examination destroyed him. Mr. Brennan, you testified you were afraid of Ms. Voss. Is that correct? Yes. She's 5'4" and weighs approximately 120 pounds. You're 6 feet tall and weigh 200 pounds. Why were you afraid? She had military training. How did you know that? Tyler paused. I I guessed. You guessed? Or you didn't care because you were drunk and angry? Objection! Patricia stood. Withdrawn. Rebecca moved closer. Mr. Brennan, when you pulled your knife, where was Mrs. Voss? In front of the old guy. Between you and Mr. Garrett? Yeah. Blocking you from reaching him? I guess. So she was protecting him, wasn't she? She was in the way. The way of what, Mr. Brennan? What were you trying to do that she was blocking? Tyler realized his mistake too late. Nothing. I wasn't trying to... You weren't trying to attack Mr. Garrett? Then why did you pull a knife? For protection. Protection from a woman who weighed half what you did and was standing still with her hands out? Rebecca's voice dripped contempt. Or were you angry that someone dared to tell you no? Tyler had no answer. Marcus Webb refused to testify, but his recorded jailhouse call was played for the jury. His voice, drunk with arrogance, filled the courtroom. We taught that nurse a lesson. Stupid bitch thought she could talk to us like that. The prosecution rested. Closing arguments were brief. Rebecca reminded the jury of the evidence, the surveillance footage, the injuries, the defendant's own words. Catherine delivered the federal charges portion, emphasizing the attack on a disabled veteran and protected service animal. Patricia Mills and Robert Chase tried to salvage something, anything, but their clients had confessed on camera and in recorded calls. There was nothing left to salvage. The jury deliberated for 97 minutes. When they returned, the forewoman, a grandmother of 5, read the verdict in a steady voice. In the matter of the state of Nevada versus Tyler Brennan and Marcus Webb, on the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find both defendants guilty. Emma closed her eyes. On the charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, we find both defendants guilty. Dan's hand found hers. On the charge of assault on a disabled veteran, we find both defendants guilty. The verdicts continued. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Every charge, every count. Tyler Brennan's face went white. Marcus Webb stared straight ahead, expressionless. Judge Okonkwo set sentencing for 2 weeks out. The defendants will remain in custody without bail. This court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Emma stood at the top of the steps with Rebecca and Catherine flanking her. The warrior contingent formed a protective barrier, keeping reporters at a distance. Emma had prepared no statement. But when a reporter shouted, "Ms. Voss, how do you feel?" she paused. "I feel like justice exists," she said quietly, "and I feel grateful to everyone who made sure these men faced consequences." "What about your future? Will you continue nursing?" "I don't know yet. I'm focused on healing first. Do you have a message for other veterans?" Emma thought about that. I think the message is that we're still warriors, even when we're home. Even when we're doing ordinary jobs in ordinary places. The fight doesn't end. It just changes shape. And we take care of each other. Always." The cameras captured it all. That night, news broadcasts played the clip on repeat. Emma's words became a rallying cry for veterans across the country. But Emma wasn't watching. She was back in her apartment, finally alone, sitting in the dark and letting herself feel everything she'd held back for weeks. She cried for the life she'd lost, for the career that would never be the same, for the invisibility she'd cherished and could never reclaim. But she also felt something else, something she hadn't expected. Pride. She'd stood her ground. She'd protected someone vulnerable, and she'd survived to see justice done. That night, she slept without dreams. 2 weeks later, Tyler Brennan and Marcus Webb stood before Judge Okonkwo for sentencing. The courtroom was packed again. Warriors in the gallery, media in the overflow room, families of both victim and perpetrators watching with very different emotions. Emma sat in the front row, flanked by Dan and Thomas. She wore a simple dress and her hair pulled back. Her right hand rested in her lap, still healing but improving daily. She looked directly at the men who tried to kill her. They wouldn't meet her eyes. Judge Okonkwo reviewed the pre-sentencing reports. Both defendants had been evaluated by psychologists, their criminal histories examined, their potential for rehabilitation assessed. The results were damning. "Mr. Brennan," Judge Okonkwo began, "you have 3 prior assault convictions. You have shown no remorse for this attack. Even now, in your statement to the court, you blame the victim for her own injuries. You demonstrate a fundamental inability to accept responsibility for your actions. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Webb, you are a convicted felon who violated parole by being out past curfew, by drinking alcohol, and by committing multiple felonies. You bragged about this attack while in custody. You called Ms. Voss vile names and celebrated her suffering. You too show no capacity for remorse or rehabilitation. Judge Okonkwo set down her papers and looked at both men directly. You attacked a woman who has served her country with distinction, a woman who has saved lives on battlefields and in hospitals, a woman who, even while being stabbed, prioritized protecting a vulnerable veteran over her own safety. And you did this because she dared to tell you to leave someone alone. The judge's voice hardened. This court recognizes the severity of your crimes. The jury has found you guilty on all counts. The prosecution has requested maximum sentences. I agree. She pronounced sentence. Tyler Brennan, 25 years to life on attempted murder, with additional consecutive sentences for the assault charges. Total, 34 years before parole eligibility. Marcus Webb, 25 years to life on attempted murder, plus the remainder of his original 6-year sentence for parole violation, plus consecutive sentences for assault. Total, 38 years before parole eligibility. Both men would be in their 70s before they had any chance of freedom. The federal charges, still pending, would add more time if filed. Tyler Brennan broke. He started crying, begging the judge for mercy. Please, I didn't mean, I was drunk. I'm sorry. You had numerous opportunities to be sorry, Judge Okonkwo said coldly. You chose arrogance instead. Bailiff, remove them. As the defendants were led away in shackles, Tyler looked back at Emma one last time. She stared back, unblinking, until he turned away. Outside, Rebecca Lansing addressed the media. Justice has been served. 2 violent criminals will spend decades in prison for attempting to murder a hero. This case sends a clear message. Attacks on veterans, on service members, on anyone trying to protect the vulnerable will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Emma stood slightly behind, not speaking, but her presence said everything. That evening, the warrior contingent gathered at a local restaurant to celebrate. Emma initially declined the invitation, but Dan convinced her to come for at least one drink. You need to see this, he said cryptically. When Emma arrived, the restaurant's private room was filled with veterans, not just the 20 who'd stayed for trial, but over 100 who'd traveled back for this moment. A banner hung on the wall. Semper Fortis, always courageous. Thomas Reyes stood and raised a glass. To Emma Voss, who reminded us all what it means to be a warrior. The room erupted in cheers. Emma felt overwhelmed. I don't deserve this. I just did what anyone would. No, Dan interrupted. What anyone should do. But you actually did it. That's the difference. Speeches followed. Veterans shared stories of Emma's medical care in Afghanistan, details she'd forgotten, patients she'd saved and never seen again. One man, a former ranger, stood with tears in his eyes. You pulled me out of a burning vehicle in Kandahar, he said. I never got to thank you. I'm David Chen. You saved my life 12 years ago. Emma stared at him, memory flooding back. I remember. You had a broken femur and second-degree burns. You stayed with me the whole helicopter ride, kept me calm, made sure I didn't go into shock. David's voice broke. I have 3 kids now because of you. They exist because you didn't give up on me. Emma couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. The celebration continued late into the night. Stories, laughter, brotherhood. For the first time since the attack, Emma felt like maybe being seen wasn't so terrible after all. But as the evening wound down and guests began leaving, a man Emma didn't recognize approached her. He was in his 60s, gray-haired, with the bearing of senior military leadership. Ms. Voss, I'm Colonel James Mitchell, retired. I commanded the task force you were attached to in Afghanistan. I wanted to thank you personally for your service and your courage. Thank you, sir. I also wanted to give you something. He handed her a folded flag, an American flag, carefully preserved. This flew over our FOB during your deployment. I saved it specifically to give to you if we ever met again. You earned it 1,000 times over. Emma took the flag with trembling hands. I don't know what to say. Say you'll remember that you're not just a nurse. You're not just a veteran. You're a warrior who's made a difference in more lives than you know. And that difference doesn't end just because your career changes. He saluted her. Emma returned it, holding the flag against her chest. After he left, Emma sat alone for a moment, the folded flag in her lap. Dan appeared beside her. You okay? I spent 4 years trying to forget who I was, trying to be invisible. And maybe that was a mistake. Emma looked up at him. I can't go back to trauma nursing, but maybe there's something else I can do. Something that uses everything I've learned. Like what? Emma smiled slowly. I have no idea, but I'm going to figure it out. The next morning, Emma woke to her phone ringing. An unknown number. Ms. Voss, this is Dr. Patricia Hernandez from the Nevada Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm calling about a position that just opened up. Director of Emergency Medical Services for the State IA system. It would involve developing protocols, training staff, and creating programs to serve veterans. Given your background, both military and civilian, I think you'd be perfect. Would you be interested in discussing it? Emma sat up carefully, protecting her healing wounds. Yes, I would. Excellent. Can you come in next week for an interview? I'll be there. After she hung up, Emma looked around her small apartment. It had been her sanctuary, her hiding place. But she didn't need to hide anymore. She'd been found, been seen, been recognized. And somehow, impossibly, she was stronger for it. Outside her window, the Nevada sun was rising over the desert. A new day, a new beginning. Emma Voss smiled and started planning her future. But in a federal courthouse downtown, Deputy U.S. Attorney Catherine Ward was opening a new file. The federal charges against Tyler Brennan and Marcus Webb weren't complete yet. There was one more charge to file, one more consequence to deliver, and this one would ensure the men who tried to kill a warrior would never see freedom again. The federal indictment came down 6 days after state sentencing. Catherine Ward stood in front of Judge Harold Brenner, no relation to Tyler Brennan, in federal court, presenting the case that would seal both defendants' fates permanently. The courtroom was smaller than the state trial venue, more austere, with the seal of the United States mounted prominently behind the bench. Your Honor, the United States charges Tyler Brennan and Marcus Webb with violations of Federal Statute 18 U.S.C. 249, bias-motivated interference with federally protected activities, specifically targeting a disabled veteran exercising his right to public accommodation. Additionally, we charge both defendants under the Service Dog Protection Act with willful interference with a federally registered service animal performing duties for a disabled person. These crimes carry mandatory minimum sentences and cannot run concurrent with state charges. Judge Brenner reviewed the indictment. These are serious charges, Ms. Ward. The mandatory minimums alone add 15 years. Yes, Your Honor, and the evidence supports every element. The defendants targeted Daniel Garrett specifically because of his veteran status and disability. They interfered with Ranger, a registered service dog, while he was performing his duties. And they did so with malice aforethought, as evidenced by their own statements. Patricia Mills stood from the defense table, looking exhausted. She'd aged visibly since the state trial. Your Honor, my client is already serving 34 years. This is piling on. This is accountability, Catherine interrupted. Federal crimes require federal prosecution. The state charges address the attack on Ms. Voss. These charges address the attack on a protected veteran and his service animal. They're distinct violations. Judge Brenner made his ruling. The indictments stand. Trial is set for 60 days from today. Defendants remain in federal custody pending trial. Tyler Brennan didn't attend the hearing. He'd been placed on suicide watch at the state prison after attempting to hang himself with a bedsheet. The attempt failed, but it demonstrated his mental state, broken, desperate, facing decades behind bars with no hope of early release. Marcus Webb sat in the courtroom, handcuffed, staring at nothing. His girlfriend had stopped visiting. His children, the ones he owed $43,000 in support, had written letters to the judge asking for maximum sentences. His parole officer had testified against him. Every person who'd once tolerated his presence had turned away. He was alone. Outside the federal courthouse, Emma met with Catherine in a secure conference room. "I need you to testify again," Catherine said. "Federal trial, similar questions, but focused specifically on Dan Garrett and Ranger. The jury needs to understand that the attack on you was part of a larger pattern of targeting veterans." Emma flexed her damaged hand. Physical therapy was helping, but she'd never regain full function. "When?" "Trial starts in 8 weeks. Your testimony would come early, probably week 1. "I'll be there." Catherine hesitated. "Emma, I heard about the VA job offer. Congratulations." "Thank you. I start next month." "That's a big change from bedside nursing." "It has to be. I can't do trauma work anymore." Emma held up her scarred hand. "But I can train others. I can build programs. I can make sure veterans get the emergency care they deserve. You're turning this into something positive." "I'm trying to." Emma paused. "Catherine, I need to ask you something. When this is all over, the federal trial, the appeals, everything, will they really stay in prison, or will some technicality set them free?" Catherine's expression hardened. "They're not getting out. State charges alone guarantee that. The federal charges are insurance. Between state and federal time, they'll die in prison. That's not hyperbole, that's mathematics." "Good. You want them to suffer." "I want them to face consequences. There's a difference." Catherine studied her. "You know what I noticed during the state trial? You never showed anger. Fear, yes. Sadness about your injuries, but never rage. Rage doesn't help anyone. Most victims feel it anyway." Emma was quiet for a moment. "I feel it, late at night when my hand aches and I can't sleep, when I think about the career I lost, but anger doesn't change what happened. Action does. So I'm taking action, new job, new purpose, new fight. You're remarkable. I'm just tired of being a victim. I want to be something else." 3 weeks later, Emma started her position as Director of Emergency Medical Services for the Nevada VA system. Her first day involved meetings with hospital administrators, reviewing protocols, and identifying gaps in veteran emergency care. The gaps were extensive. Many VA facilities lacked specialized trauma training. Emergency response times for rural veterans were inadequate. Mental health crisis intervention was inconsistent, and there was virtually no coordination between VA facilities and civilian hospitals for veteran-specific emergencies. Emma spent her first month conducting site visits across Nevada. She drove thousands of miles, visiting every VA facility in the state, talking to staff, interviewing veterans about their emergency care experiences. What she found was both heartbreaking and familiar. Veterans who'd survived combat were dying at home from preventable emergencies because response protocols failed them. Medics who'd saved lives overseas couldn't access timely care when they needed it. The system was broken in fundamental ways. Emma began writing proposals for change. She drafted new emergency protocols specifically designed for veteran populations. She created training programs that incorporated combat medicine techniques into civilian emergency care. She established partnerships between VA facilities and local hospitals to ensure seamless transitions for veteran patients. Her proposals were ambitious, expensive, and necessary. Dr. Patricia Hernandez, Emma's supervisor, reviewed the first round of recommendations with raised eyebrows. "This is comprehensive," she said carefully. "It's also going to cost millions." "Doing nothing costs lives," Emma replied. "I've calculated the mortality rates for preventable veteran emergencies in Nevada. We lose an average of 47 veterans per year to delays in emergency care. If my protocols save even half of those, we're talking about 23 lives annually. What's the dollar value of that?" Patricia smiled slightly. "You sound like someone who's testified in front of hostile juries." "I've had practice staying calm under pressure. I'm approving phase 1 of your proposal. We'll implement the training program first, then reassess for the infrastructure changes." Emma's training program launched in November, 8 months after the attack. She personally led the first session, a 3-day intensive for VA emergency staff across the state. The curriculum combined her combat medicine experience with civilian trauma protocols, creating a hybrid approach designed specifically for veteran populations. On the second day of training, a young VA nurse named Marcus, unfortunate name given recent events, approached Emma during a break. Ms. Voss, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. I heard about what happened to you, the attack. Is it true you can't do bedside nursing anymore? Emma held up her right hand. The scars were visible, the fingers slightly crooked from tendon damage. It's true. I don't have the fine motor control required for trauma work. But you're still here, still teaching. How do you do that? How do you not just give up? Emma considered the question. Because giving up means they win. The men who attacked me wanted to destroy something. I refused to let them destroy my purpose. They took my hands out of patient care, but they didn't take my knowledge. They didn't take my experience. They didn't take my ability to make things better. Marcus nodded slowly. I'm a veteran. Iraq, 2009. I came home and couldn't do infantry work anymore. Physical injuries. I felt useless for years. Then I found nursing. Hearing you say that, it helps. You're not useless. You're redirected. There's a difference. That conversation repeated itself throughout the training sessions. Veterans who'd been told they were broken, discovering they were simply evolving. Emma's story, her refusal to be defined by her injuries, became a quiet inspiration. By December, Emma's protocols had been implemented in 15 VA facilities statewide. Emergency response times improved. Mortality rates for preventable emergencies dropped. The data was preliminary but promising. Dr. Hernandez called Emma into her office 2 days before Christmas. I have news. The regional VA director reviewed your program. They want to expand it. Expand how? Nationwide. Your protocols would become the standard for all VA emergency services across the country. Emma sat down slowly. That's a huge responsibility. It is. You'd be promoted to National Director of Veteran Emergency Medical Services, significant pay increase, office in Washington, D.C., travel to facilities across the country, and the authority to implement changes at the federal level. When would this start? March, if you accept. That gives you time to wrap up here and relocate. Emma thought about her small apartment in Crossfire, about the hospital where she'd worked invisibly for 4 years, about the alley where she'd nearly died. I accept. Patricia smiled. I thought you might. Congratulations, Emma. You've earned this. The federal trial against Tyler Brennan and Marcus Webb began in January. Emma testified on day 2, repeating much of what she'd said at the state trial, but with additional focus on Dan Garrett and Ranger. When you saw the defendants approaching Mr. Garrett, what was your assessment of the situation? Catherine asked. A disabled elderly veteran with a service dog was being targeted by 2 younger, larger, aggressive men. The threat was obvious. Why didn't you call for help instead of intervening? Because the threat was immediate. There wasn't time. Ranger was showing defensive behaviors, flattened ears, protective stance. Dan was trying to de-escalate verbally, but the defendants weren't responding to reason. They were escalating. Someone had to interrupt that trajectory. So you stepped in? Yes. Knowing the risk, knowing the necessity. The federal jury, a different panel than the state trial, watched Emma with the same intensity the first jury had shown. But this time, the focus was narrower. This wasn't about attempted murder. This was about targeting a veteran because of his service and disability. Dan Garrett's testimony was even more powerful in federal court. He described decades of service, the injuries that left him with a disability rating, Ranger's training, and certification as a service animal. When they mocked my service, what did they say specifically? Catherine asked. Dan's jaw tightened. They called me a broken toy soldier, said I was too useless for real work, made jokes about Ranger being too stupid to be a real dog. And this was before the physical attack? Yes. They established that they knew I was a veteran, knew I was disabled, and targeted me because of it. What would have happened if Ms. Voss hadn't intervened? They would have hurt me, maybe killed Ranger. I couldn't defend myself against 2 younger men. Emma saved my life. The defense tried to argue that the defendants didn't specifically target Dan because of his veteran status, that it was a random altercation. But their own words, captured on surveillance audio and in social media posts, destroyed that argument. Tyler Brennan's Facebook history showed years of anti-military posts, comments about veterans being freeloaders, jokes about PTSD being weakness. Arguments that disabled veterans should stop whining. The pattern was undeniable. The federal jury deliberated for 4 hours, longer than the state trial, but the verdict was the same. Guilty on all counts. Judge Brenner scheduled sentencing for February. The mandatory minimums meant Tyler and Marcus would each receive at least 15 additional years to be served after their state sentences. That pushed their total incarceration to nearly 50 years each. They would die in prison. Not from violence, not from dramatic escape attempts, just from time and age and the slow erosion of hope. Emma attended the federal sentencing. She sat in the same front row, flanked by the same warriors who'd stood vigil for her a year ago. But this time, she wasn't testifying. She was just witnessing. Judge Brenner addressed the defendants one final time. You targeted a veteran because of his service. You attacked a woman because she defended him. You showed contempt for the very people who sacrificed to protect your freedoms. This court finds your actions reprehensible and your lack of remorse disturbing. The federal sentences will run consecutive to your state sentences. You will serve a minimum of 15 years in federal prison after completing your state time. That is the consequence of your choices. Tyler Brennan cried. Marcus Webb stared at the floor. The gavel fell. As they were led away, Emma felt something release in her chest. Not joy, not satisfaction, just completion. This chapter was finished. Outside, reporters swarmed again. But this time, Emma had something prepared. I want to thank everyone who stood with me through this process. The warriors who showed up when I needed them. The prosecutors who fought for justice. The medical staff who saved my life. And most importantly, Dan Garrett, who trusted a stranger to protect him and gave me the opportunity to be who I needed to be. She paused. These men will spend the rest of their lives in prison. That's not revenge. That's accountability. And it's what happens when you try to destroy people who refuse to be destroyed. Dan stepped forward, Ranger at his side. Emma Voss is a warrior. She proved it in Afghanistan. She proved it in that alley. And she proves it every day by turning her trauma into purpose. We're proud to call her family. Thomas Reyes added, the Brotherhood doesn't forget. We didn't forget what she did for us overseas. We didn't forget what she did for Dan. And we won't forget what she's doing now, saving veteran lives through her work at the VA. She's still fighting. She's still winning. The cameras captured all of it. That night, news segments led with the federal sentencing and Emma's promotion to national director. The narrative shifted from nurse attacked to warrior thriving. Emma's story became something larger than herself. It became a symbol of resilience, of refusing victimhood, of transforming pain into progress. But Emma didn't watch the news coverage. She was too busy packing for Washington, D.C. Her last day in Crossfire came in late February. She spent the morning at the hospital saying goodbye to colleagues. Dr. Sarah Chen hugged her tightly. You're going to change lives, Sarah said. I already am. No, I mean it. What you've built here, it's going to save veterans across the country. You took the worst moment of your life and turned it into something that matters. Emma smiled. Someone had to. Doctor. Marcus Webb appeared, carrying a framed photograph. We wanted you to have this. The photo showed the warrior formation in the hospital parking lot, taken from Emma's ICU window. 200 warriors standing in perfect lines, holding vigil. So you never forget, Marcus said, that you're not alone. Emma's throat tightened. Thank you. Her last stop was the diner where it all began. The silver cup had become something of a landmark. Tourists sometimes stopped to see where that nurse saved the veteran. The owners had placed a small plaque near the door. In this place, courage confronted cowardice. Courage won. Emma sat at the counter and ordered coffee. The same waitress who'd been working the night of the attack served her. You're leaving, the waitress said. It wasn't a question. New job, Washington, D.C. We're going to miss you. You made this place famous. I made it notorious. There's a difference. The waitress smiled. You made it matter. Before you, this was just another late-night diner on a highway. Now it's a place where someone stood up when it counted. That means something. Emma left a generous tip and walked to her car. Her hands, both of them, even the damaged one, were steady. Dan Garrett was waiting in the parking lot, Ranger beside him. Thought you might want company for the drive out of town, he said. Just to the city limits? Just to the city limits. They drove in comfortable silence, Ranger's head resting on the center console between them. As they reached the "Now Leaving Crossfire" sign, Dan pulled over. "I have something for you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a combat medic patch, worn, faded, clearly decades old. "This was mine. Vietnam, 1971. My medic wore it, saved my life 3 times before he got hit. He didn't make it home, but his patch did." Emma touched the fabric gently. "Dan, I can't." "You can. You're carrying on what he started, what all of us who wore that patch believed in, that you move toward the fight, not away from it, that you save lives even when it costs you everything." Dan's voice roughened. "You're the best of us, Emma. Never doubt that." Emma carefully pinned the patch to her jacket. "I won't." They embraced, veteran to veteran, warrior to warrior, family to family. Then Emma got in her car and drove toward her new life. Washington, D.C. was massive, chaotic, and overwhelming. Emma's new office was in a federal building near the Capitol, with windows overlooking the National Mall. Her team consisted of 14 people, analysts, trainers, administrators, all dedicated to overhauling veteran emergency care nationwide. The work was intense. Emma spent her first month reviewing existing protocols, identifying failures, and drafting comprehensive reforms. She traveled to VA facilities in 12 states, conducting the same assessments she'd done in Nevada, but on a national scale. The problems were worse than she'd imagined, but so were the solutions. By summer, Emma's protocols were being implemented in VA facilities across the country. Emergency response times improved, coordination with civilian hospitals increased, veteran-specific trauma training became standard, and lives were saved. The data came in slowly, quarterly reports showing reduced mortality rates, improved outcomes, faster interventions. Each percentage point represented real veterans who lived instead of died. Emma kept those reports in her desk drawer and read them when the work felt overwhelming. In September, 18 months after the attack, Emma received an unexpected invitation. The Secretary of Veterans Affairs wanted to meet with her. The meeting was formal, the Secretary's office, complete with flags and official portraits. Emma wore her best suit, her damaged hand carefully positioned to minimize its visibility. Secretary James Morrison was in his 60s, a former Marine with the bearing of someone who'd commanded troops in combat. "Ms. Voss, your protocols have achieved something remarkable. In 9 months, we've seen a 14% reduction in preventable veteran emergency deaths. 14%. Do you understand what that means? It means we're saving approximately 300 lives annually. 300 veterans who go home to their families because you redesigned how we respond to emergencies." Morrison leaned forward. "I'm establishing a new position, Undersecretary for Emergency Medical Innovation. I want you to take it." Emma blinked. "Undersecretary, that's a significant promotion. You'd oversee all emergency medical initiatives across the VA system. Budget authority, policy control, direct access to the Secretary. Your protocols would become law, not just guidelines." "When would this start?" "January, if you accept. That gives you time to prepare and transition your current team." Emma thought about the path that had led here. From invisible night shift nurse to combat medic to victim to warrior to leader. Every step had been painful. Every step had been necessary. "I accept," Morrison smiled. "I thought you might. Welcome to the executive team, Undersecretary Voss." The promotion made national news. The nurse who'd been stabbed defending a veteran was now one of the highest-ranking medical officials in the VA system. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Helen Brewster, the hospital administrator who'd tried to remove the warrior vigil, sent Emma a congratulatory email. Emma deleted it without responding. In December, 2 years after the attack, Emma returned to Crossfire for the first time since leaving. She'd been invited to speak at the VA facility where she'd first implemented her protocols. The facility had been renamed the Emma Voss Center for Veteran Emergency Care. Emma stood in front of the building, staring at her name on the sign, and felt the weight of everything that had brought her here. Inside, the auditorium was packed. VA staff, local veterans, community members, and a front row full of familiar faces. Dan Garrett, Thomas Reyes, Sarah Chen, Marcus Webb, the doctor, and 20 other warriors who'd stood vigil for her. Emma took the podium and looked at the audience. 2 years ago, I was stabbed in an alley half a mile from here. I almost died. And in the aftermath, I had to decide who I was going to be. Was I going to be a victim, someone defined by what was done to me, or was I going to be something else? She paused, gathering her thoughts. I chose to be a warrior, not the kind who carries weapons, the kind who carries purpose, the kind who sees a problem and refuses to accept that it's unsolvable, the kind who stands between danger and the people who need protecting, whether that danger is two drunk men with a knife or a broken system that lets veterans die from preventable emergencies. Emma held up her scarred hand. This hand will never be what it was. I'll never suture a wound again, never start an IV with my right hand, never do the physical work I loved. But I can do something else. I can build systems that save lives. I can train others to do the work I can't. I can fight battles that matter. Her voice strengthened. The men who attacked me are in prison. They'll die there. That's justice. But this, she gestured to the building, to the protocols, to the lives saved. This is victory. They tried to destroy me. Instead, they created someone more dangerous than they could imagine. Not dangerous because of violence, dangerous because of purpose. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Every veteran in this room has faced moments where the world tried to define you by your wounds, by your disabilities, by your trauma. I'm here to tell you that those moments don't get the final word. You do. You choose what your pain becomes. You choose what your scars mean. And if you choose purpose over victimhood, you become unstoppable. Emma looked directly at the warriors in the front row. 2 years ago, 200 warriors stood outside a hospital for a woman they barely knew. They didn't do it for recognition. They did it because that's what warriors do. We protect our own. We refuse to let each other fall. We turn pain into strength and tragedy into triumph. Her voice broke slightly. You taught me that. You showed me that being seen isn't weakness, it's power. And I'm using that power to save lives. The applause started slowly, then built into a standing ovation that lasted 3 minutes. After the speech, Emma walked through the facility, seeing her protocols in action. Emergency response teams trained in her methods. Veterans receiving care designed specifically for their needs. Lives being saved because someone refused to accept that the system couldn't change. Dan found her in the training wing, watching a simulation exercise. You did good up there, Mutz, he said. I just told the truth. Truth is powerful. Dan paused. Ranger died last month, peacefully, in his sleep. He was 14, ancient for a German shepherd. Emma felt tears sting her eyes. I'm so sorry. Don't be. He lived a full life because of you. Got 2 extra years he wouldn't have had if you hadn't stepped in that night. Dan pulled out his phone and showed Emma a photo. Ranger sleeping in a patch of sunlight, gray muzzle resting on his paws. I buried him with his service vest and a letter telling him what a good boy he was. Felt like he should know. He knew. They always know. I'm getting another dog next month. Already picked him out from a rescue. His name's going to be Carter. Emma looked up sharply. Carter? After you, Emma Carter Voss. Figured it was fitting, naming my new partner after the woman who saved my last one. Emma couldn't speak. She just hugged Dan while tears streamed down her face. That evening, Emma visited the alley where it happened. Someone had painted a mural on the brick wall, an abstract piece showing a figure standing between light and darkness, arms outstretched, protecting something precious. No names, no explanations, just the image. Emma stood in front of it as the sun set, thinking about all the ways her life had changed. All the things she'd lost and gained, all the people she'd become. She wasn't the invisible nurse anymore. She wasn't the broken victim. She wasn't even just the warrior who'd survived. She was the woman who'd turned her worst moment into her greatest purpose. And she was just getting started. Emma's phone buzzed, a message from her team in D.C. Emergency protocols officially adopted nationwide, effective immediately. All VA facilities now operating under Voss standards. You did it. She smiled, typed back a quick thanks, and pocketed her phone. Then she walked out of the alley, past the diner with its commemorative plaque, toward her car and the future waiting beyond. Behind her, the mural caught the last rays of sunlight, casting long shadows across the pavement where blood had once pooled. But the blood was gone now, washed away by rain and time and the relentless forward motion of healing. Only the art remained, only the memory of courage, only the proof that when darkness comes, someone will always stand in its way. Emma drove back to her hotel, packed her belongings, and prepared to return to Washington. Tomorrow she'd brief Congress on her emergency protocols. Next week she'd testify before a Senate committee on veteran health care reform. Next month she'd launch a national training initiative. The work never stopped. The fight never ended. But Emma Voss had learned something crucial in that alley 2 years ago. Sometimes the fight chooses you, and when it does, you have two options: run from it or run toward it. Emma had chosen, and 200 warriors had shown her that she'd chosen correctly. Now she was teaching others to make the same choice, to stand when it's easier to walk away, to protect when it's safer to ignore, to build when it's simpler to accept destruction. The men who tried to kill her had wanted to silence someone who dared to challenge them. Instead, they'd created a voice that would echo through every VA facility in America. They'd created a leader. They'd created a warrior who fought with policy instead of weapons, who saved lives with systems instead of surgery, who proved that the strongest battles aren't won with violence, they're won with purpose. Emma Voss had found hers, and she would spend the rest of her life making sure no veteran died from an emergency that could have been prevented. That was her mission now. That was her victory. That was who she had become. Not despite what happened to her, but because of how she chose to carry it forward. The scars on her hand would never fade. The nightmares would never fully stop. The career she'd loved was gone forever. But in their place, she'd built something that mattered. Something that would outlast her. Something that would save lives long after her own ended. She'd turned 5 knife wounds into a national movement. She'd turned blood on pavement into policy that protected thousands. She'd turned invisibility into undeniable presence. And she'd proven that the warrior's fight doesn't end when the battle does. It evolves. It transforms. It becomes something greater than survival. It becomes legacy. Emma Voss was no longer the woman who'd been attacked in an alley. She was the woman who'd stood up, dusted herself off, and changed an entire system because she refused to let violence have the final word. That's who she'd always been. The world had just needed to catch up. And now that it had, there was no limit to what she could accomplish. The invisible nurse had become impossible to ignore. And that was exactly how it should be.